Every year, the Royal Institute of British Architects holds a competition to find the UK's best new house. From hundreds of entries, they whittle it down to a long list, then a shortlist, and finally a winner for this great architectural prize. And this year, for the first time, Grand Designs is along for the ride. So, we'll be taking you behind usually closed doors to see some of the finest new architecture in the country. Wow, that's like a cliff of brick. If that isn't a facade, I don't know what is. To discover why these homes are so special. Whose idea was this?
Mummy's.
God, blimey. And most importantly, what they're like to live in.
Sit there, dangle my legs out, cup of coffee. Perfect.
This series is entirely dedicated to great houses of today, homes from which you can take inspiration, which are the exemplars of where design is heading. And then, at the end of the series, we'll be finding out here exclusively on Channel 4 which one of these houses is the RIBA House of the Year for 2015. Looking at great architecture is something of a dream job, really. A wonderful set of experiences that, frankly, we would like to share with you. Buildings are not art, they're not sculpture or music. They're there for people to inhabit. And for that matter, they are also in our built environment. We don't have a choice about whether we engage with them. So they have a public responsibility, if you like, a responsibility to belong and to create some kind of dialogue with where they are. Now, I think that great buildings are those which do more than that, which in creating that dialogue enhance a place, add a new chapter to the story of a place. And to celebrate this idea, every year the Royal Institute of British Architects seeks out the finest newly built houses around the UK by naming Britain's House of the Year. It's the BAFTAs of residential architecture. There's everything from luxurious villas to ingenious and modest homes built on the tiniest of budgets. Each week, we'll visit a choice of homes on the long list and then discover which of them have been shortlisted. And at the end of the series, we'll find out who the 2015 winner is. There's such a diversity of buildings that I've grouped them into some lively categories that try to capture some of the ideas emerging out of architects' minds in 2015. In this first episode, we're going to look at houses that have all been designed for country living. And joining me on this architectural journey are Editor-in-Chief of Elle Decoration, Michelle Agundahin.
Now, this is very dramatic.
And architect Zach Munro.
You said it's the double height space, like you have generally in a house. This is where we keep the double height space.
This first house I'm visiting is in my home county of Somerset. At first glance, there's nothing unusual about this rural scene. But look, what's this? It looks like a brand new barn, something that already blends discreetly with the local farmyard style. Now, there are some brand new agricultural galvanised gates. No farmer in Somerset would buy brand new gates. This must be it. It's a very quiet looking house. Morning.
Morning.
Good Somerset weather.
It's lovely, isn't it? How are you?
Graham, yeah?
Emily.
Emily, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, lovely house. Beautiful. I've driven past this before. From the road, it may look like a pleasant, well-kept single-storey house. But there's more. It's built into a steep hill. The entrance level leads to all the main family living areas, including a kitchen, office, snug and guest bedroom, and a large veranda wraps around two sides of the building. While downstairs are 3 family bedrooms and a service area tucked in behind. This house has made the long list partly because of its hybrid language, that of a contemporary Somerset alpine chalet, which also mirrors a nearby barn and slots delicately into its surroundings. For architect Graham and interior designer Emily, the house is both a home and an office. They took a gamble by swapping their life in London wholesale to pursue their dream of living against and in the great outdoors.
Yeah, so this is the main space.
And what a very beautiful room.
We must have spent 4 or 5 years talking about it, didn't we, even before we had this site.
We did a lot of, when we have our country house.
And we came down to an auction here and 7:30 in the evening in Wells and kind of got back to London again. We're just sitting in bed, having bought this thing, saying, God, what have we done? What have we done?
You bought a site.
Yeah, an old falling down bungalow.
So when you went to see the planners about this, what was their initial response?
They were pretty receptive to it, basically. And they really said, in the end, it'll be up to whether anybody locally has any objections to it.
And did any locals object?
No.
Well, we were really keen to, because we're going to live here, we wanted to meet our neighbours, so we made a timber model of the house, which we took round. And, I think everyone loves a model, but also we genuinely wanted to communicate to them that it was going to be a positive thing, hopefully.
Yeah. The house was built using a hybrid of timber panels and frames and took 3 years to complete. Graham and Emily undertook a lot of the work themselves, and that blurring of the roles between architect, client and builder gives the finished building a tremendous coherence. So this is a room where you cook and eat.
Yep.
And just a little snug
Yep.
sitting room.
Yes.
The moment you walk in here, the sound dens, it's softer. The joinery is sort of unremitting in this building. Inside, the oak goes on and on and on. These doors are oak, are they? They must be solid. And how do they work?
So they just unfold like that. And so then this can become a bedroom at Christmas and things like that.
Very beautifully detailed. Traditional joinery details there, too. You couldn't resist those.
Our joiner couldn't resist those.
Oh, your joiner couldn't resist those. Oh, they weren't specified. This house oozes exquisite craftsmanship, and with it, a serene atmosphere.
We wanted it to feel really timbery everywhere you go, so outside it's got green oak, which is kind of rough sawn. As you come inside, you've got these oak linings everywhere around the reception rooms. With this kind of plain oak, which is a kind of more refined version of the cladding outside.
And Graham and Emily's house has been longlisted for another key reason. It's one of only 400 or so buildings in the UK to have been awarded a Passive House Eco Performance certificate. The large windows allow maximum warmth to enter in the winter months when the sun's low, but are shaded by the verandas in the summer months when the sun's higher, and that helps establish an even year-round temperature. Just one wood burner supplies all the winter hot water. Yearly cost, £150. But in case you're thinking this house seems just too good to be true, come and look at this. Come and look at this. Look, every beautifully crafted minimal house needs one of these, doesn't it? A junk room. You need somewhere to put all the kit, and every house has one. Yeah, this is the backstage of architecture. This is actually the bowels of the building. This is the big thermal store, all the controls. We just draw a veil, of course, with a beautifully crafted door. We often criticise modern houses for their lack of atmosphere. Not this place.
Yeah, so this is our bit.
Oh, yes, I can tell. Yeah, the rest of the downstairs is really very functional. Painted plywood. Suddenly we're in luxury hotel bedroom land.
We're in the boutique hotel here.
It's great.
And we've got these exposed beams in the bedrooms down here, which is quite an effort to do because you've got to fire protect them. But we thought that sort of thing was really worth it for the atmosphere of the spaces. And we didn't have any children. We moved to Somerset. We've got a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old now. And when they're teenagers, and I hope we've predicted what they might want in their rooms, say, and they can climb out the window and smoke outside or whatever. Yes.
They need a lock when they're 13, that's all. Graham and Emily have built a memorable house that'll continue to slowly stitch itself into its setting and wrap its nurturing, warm, woody fabric around its occupants. This is a very, very good house, and it's taught me something. You know, I think the reason we like traditional architecture in the countryside is because it fits, it's familiar. It's composed of lots and lots of ideas that have been softly, carefully woven into one coherent whole. And what Emily and Graham have shown me is that you can do that with a brand new building. But what does it take to win this competition? Last year's winner was architect Chris Loyne for his wonderful Stormy Castle on the Gower Peninsula. Stormy Castle won because of the exemplary way the building manipulates light and space, and the way that Chris integrated a crystalline piece of modernism into a wild rural setting.
Winning the award is huge for an architect. I don't know if it directly increases your workload. I think it will. But to be recognised by your peers for something as special as this award, I mean, it means a massive amount. It gives you a confidence as well.
And as a previous winner, Chris gets to join this year's judging panel, along with some key RIBA members and a representative from the sponsor, Hiscox Home Insurance.
I get to nose into other architects' great buildings, which is wonderful. I mean, I love nosing around all properties. It's what excites me.
The judges are looking for houses that demonstrate design excellence, fitness for purpose, and sustainability, and that glimmer of delight.
It's got to be beautiful, both inside and out. It's got to suit context, whether that's urban or rural. And client satisfaction. Never ever forget that it is the client's building, it is not yours. And hopefully, if you've done a good job, you'll have a happy client at the end.
Chris and his fellow judges have their work cut out. This year's standard is very high. So far, we've seen one stunning wooden villa in Somerset. There are 4 more extraordinary houses still to go.
This is, to us, it's the sort of modern Swiss chalet.
We're exploring some of the most architecturally ambitious homes in the UK countryside, all of which are in the running to be crowned House of the Year by the Royal Institute of British Architects. This next house is a worthy addition to the great tradition of modernist rural villas. Now, the thing is, when you site your home in the middle of your landscape, what it does is afford you the opportunity to open up the building, to drink in those views from all directions, to capture and frame them. And what a delightful way to cement a relationship with the landscape. Our second nominee this week is in the heart of Sussex, with sweeping views across the South Downs. Zach Munro came to meet its owners, Neville and Nicola. The judges like this building, and it's big at 370 square metres, because of the cool and controlled way it organises space, for the way it reaches out to the landscape, and for its bumpy geometrical roof and triangular skylights. The downstairs of this house is one vast and generous open-plan space containing kitchen, sitting and dining area, organised around a double-height atrium. Wow! There's also a master bedroom on the ground floor, while upstairs there are 3 boutique ensuite guest bedrooms, a cosy sitting room and a study.
Good morning.
Hiya.
Nice to see you.
You too.
I'm Nicola.
Lovely to meet you both.
Neville and Nicola's brief to the architects was simple. The house had to allow them to enjoy their shared passion, the great outdoors. And this great festival of glass does just that, like a camera set on maximum exposure, so that even from the atrium at the back of the house, you're in maximum contact with the landscape, with very little colour inside the building to distract you. Only the bedrooms provide sanctuary from this exposure. Their windows grab specific views of particular plants.
So, this is the entry into the double height space, which is reflecting all of the materials and the views that have really inspired the house.
You said it's the double height space, like you have generally in a house. This is where we keep the double height space.
We love it.
I'm noticing it's not just sort of a big glass box.
We wanted to avoid that. We wanted to try to combine the huge benefits of glass with older materials like timber to give it a warm feel.
The big thing for us was wherever we were, You can look out at the garden or out at the downs, have a great sense of light and space.
This is soaring, uplifting architecture. Big ideas and big contact with the world outside. But a lot of glass means a lot of sun. Too much, and you've got a greenhouse. But by sliding the first floor wooden box slightly forward, hey presto, shade. The geometrical simplicity of one wooden box over another glass one has, however, been developed into something much more homely.
The fireplace, for example, in the winter, is very cosy. It gives extra warmth, and it's flexible again, so you can move it around. It swivels. It swivels.
So we can sit here and have a drink with the fire, then we can swizzle it round and have it facing us whilst we're having dinner.
It's a very precise fire, isn't it? It's sort of, you can have the heat or you can have the heat.
Indeed.
But you can't.
And the other thing that we have to make it cosy is that we've got these felt screens that both block off the kitchen but also makes this room in the winter much more cosy.
I recognise these.
Yes, the roof panels.
Internally, the glass box and wooden box are strongly linked by the staggeringly good atrium. Upstairs, you can almost touch the roof.
Wow. It's very different up here.
I'm very keen on mountains in Switzerland and walking in Switzerland, and so this is, to us, it's the sort of modern Swiss chalet.
The unusual roof design is a defining feature of this house. The architects Julian King and Chantal Wilkinson wanted it to mirror the tree line behind it.
The geometry was quite complex, to say the least. It's the cross-laminated timber panels which form the first floor, effectively, the roof and the walls. There are 147 of them.
These 147 panels now make up the upstairs wooden box and roof. Their material, cross-laminated timber or CLT, is made like plywood by gluing together layers of wood to form giant sheets from which any shape can be cut. Structures made with it are incredibly strong and need little or no supporting beams or trusses. So the architects could turn the bedroom ceilings into an abstract scale model of the Alps.
Prefabrication, this was constructed in about 2 weeks. It came on a couple of articulated lorries with a crane and it was assembled on site.
The panels are cut with lasers, so all the complicated joints, there's three-way kind of really complex mitered joints on every panel.
The tolerances, the control of the accuracy of the building was amazing. I mean, it's within about 10 millimetres, the upper floor.
Why so complicated?
There's the opportunity within the roof space to do something more interesting and to make special spaces, so why not?
Neville and Nicola didn't want this house to appear just plonked down in farmland, but established in its own setting too, with a garden. It fell to the landscape designer Andy Sturgeon to fit the building to its site.
It's futile to try and compete with nature in a site like this. And so I didn't want to put a garden in front of the house. I didn't want to pollute that view, really. So we put the garden aspect, really, the obvious garden, we put that behind the house. So when you pull up in the car, you can actually see the front door, but you have to journey through the garden to get to it, which means that you're immersed in the garden, really, from the outset. And that part of the garden, the arrival sequence, if you like, which has a formal lawn and the formal beds, it is very structured, but you can see that then beyond that, it's much looser. And then within the other parts of the garden, I created different pockets. So there are different seating areas so that you can chase the sun around the garden, you can get the morning sun, and you can see out into the landscape, which is, of course, is the primary reason for being here.
The house and the garden have been lived in and loved by Neville and Nicola for the last year. So, what effect has this place had on them?
How does it feel to live in this very different house?
It's wonderful.
It's certainly changed the way I feel, and being in the house is very uplifting, simply because you are very close to nature. It's just a step or two away. And that's exactly what we wanted in the brief that we gave the architects, and I think they've achieved it superbly.
Extremely well.
It's a very, very personal space to Neville and Nicola. And all of it, you know, within quite an extraordinary bit of landscaping.
Both of the projects we've seen so far take different approaches, but both take context very seriously. They attempt to root themselves where they are. There are 3 more houses yet to see, and then we will find out which of them has made the final shortlist. This series is devoted to exploring the very best new houses in the United Kingdom. Houses which are up for the RIBA House of the Year award, from the most generous and glamorous to the most modest and retiring. This week we're looking at houses in the country. The judges, of course, want to see the relationship between buildings and landscape fully explored. They also want originality, craftsmanship and imagination. Let's not forget that this is a nationwide competition. Across the whole of the UK there is some great architecture, but one particular region punches incredibly high above its weight. Northern Ireland has 4 of the total of 20 long-listed projects. That's 1/5 for a population of 1.8 million people, which means that Northern Ireland is producing great award-winning architecture 7 times faster than the rest of the UK. Farmer and architect Patrick Bradley wanted to build himself a signature house on his parents' farm near Londonderry. The site he wanted was tricky, cherished by his family for its beauty, added to which he had very little money. Grand Designs covered the remarkable story of this project back in 2014. Paddy, this is just, oh, wow, this is just brilliant. This is mind-blowing. This house is very neat. It's made from 4 shipping containers. And it's an object lesson in how to transform an awkward site into a great home for just £135,000. The top 2 containers rest on a small rise in the land and have been joined to make one kitchen, dining and living space, with the front door at one end and a projecting balcony at the other. The lower 2 containers are set at right angles to those above and house 2 bedrooms and the bathroom. But Patrick's plan to cantilever the containers meant that some major engineering challenges needed solving first. So this is how containers really work. They are designed and have been evolved over decades in order that you can stack them like this, 10 containers high. The load from that great pile of containers is being transferred through the corners of the containers, and that way the structure can withstand massive pressures. They are not, however, designed to be stacked like this, placing a weak middle section on top of a weak middle section, which could just then crush and collapse. Despite entrusting a favourite spot on the farm to Patrick, his mother wasn't convinced there would be a happy ending. You want to come over there? You want to come over and have a look at them? Do you think?
I don't know, Kevin.
You should.
I'm withholding my judgment until then.
It's fine. Patrick wanted big windows and stairs, which would involve cutting large holes in the walls and floors. But that immediately compromised the structural integrity of the containers. Solution: add back in 10 tons of steel reinforcements. And it worked. A mere 10 weeks after this. Oh, goodness me. Oh, Patrick. This is very good. Through the front door up above, what were the 2 giant containers is now one seamless space, with kitchen and living areas all of a piece. I like this. What a treat. Up here, there's no sense of containment, but connection through big windows to the distant landscape. It's all about this view, isn't it? You know, that way, that way, that way. I love the way that rusty orange frame just separates the wildflower bit from the field beyond. You know, it's just a nice little architectural detail, that little frame. And this is pure genius. Fake grass, wild forest, and mountain beyond. Down we go. Look at this, down the golden staircase. And wherever possible, Patrick has exploited the industrial and agricultural language of raw steel, along with a sprinkling of fairy dust. Oh, look, poetry on the glass wall.
That's the Grill of Water. It's the only poem I ever wrote about the water just runs past.
It's about this river. Oh, gosh. There's a little fairy spot where we folk used to dwell. Long ago, when I was young, I knew it so well. So what happens here? A bit of a balcony or something? Does that goes in?
Nothing.
Really?
Sit there, dangle my legs out, cup of coffee. Perfect.
Yeah, lovely. First thing in the morning. I may have been overwhelmed by the quality of Patrick's building, but the sternest judgment was, of course, yet to come from his mother. What do you think of it now?
To be honest, Kevin, I have to admit I was wrong. I thought these containers, no, Patrick, I thought no good. But now, darling, fabulous. So proud of it. We couldn't believe how well it turned out. We couldn't imagine how beautiful it turned out. I think it's more beautiful, Kevin, than it was. I genuinely do, but it means a lot to us all. It really does.
I won't cliché and say I told you so.
Like all the houses in the RIBA competition, Patrick's was finished in 2014. A year on, I caught up with him at the Hauser and Worth Pavilion in Somerset to find out how life in his shipping container home has measured up. Here's a really contemporary building, and when we made that programme, one of the interesting ideas was just how radical it was in that part of Northern Ireland, you know. It seems to me that actually what you're doing is probably far more adventurous than some of the stuff that's happening on the mainland.
We do seem to have a lot of pride in us, as recently in what we do as architects and what we can construct and design, and we are willing to push the boundaries, and we are pushing the boundaries. But at the same time, I always maintain that a happy building is happy people. And so when people go to see a building, they admire a building and they smile, you know you've done something right.
And how is the house now?
It has actually worked exactly the way I wanted it, which I knew it always was going to work like that, but maybe not as good, to be honest.
Oh, well, great.
But so I'm really happy for that.
Patrick's exemplary home takes rural architecture in Northern Ireland to new stratospheric heights. It writes a new vernacular language. The judges were so impressed by Grilla that they said that it offers new promise to its landscape. What an extraordinary thing to achieve. In the 21st century, a great building ought also to use the resources needed to make it and run it frugally. Architecture should be sustainable and responsible. This next house was commissioned by a couple who've spent their entire lives close to the land. Zach Monroe has come to see it in the charming village of Palgrave in Suffolk. Stackyard is a red cedar-clad house sitting on a concrete base, angled to enjoy sun from the south and west sides. The owners decided they wanted a modern retirement home that met the highest energy efficiency standards and tucked itself into the agricultural buildings and landscape around it. Inside, Stackyard is much more complex and delightful than its simple box-like exterior suggests. The house is only 2 stories high, but has 4 mezzanine levels to it. Burrowed down at basement level are the guest bedrooms. The ground floor has a kitchen and dining room. At upper ground is the living room and study. And above that, just peeping over the parapet, is the master bedroom, from which the owners can enjoy sweeping views of the fens. Stackyard's architect, Meredith Bowles, is Zach's guide for the day.
Hello, Zach.
Hiya. Nice to meet you.
Come on in.
Ooh. As soon as you step through the front door, it becomes clear why this house was longlisted.
I really love it when you come into a house and the first thing you get is a wash of top light like this.
Well, it's quite a wide house. It's a square plan, so to get this light coming right down into the middle, you know, really enlivens it once you walk in. But you can also open it out, so if the house becomes warm in the summer, it acts like a chimney or a funnel and takes that hot air away. So it's functional as well as beautiful.
This is not an open-plan house, but one with a variety of interconnecting informal spaces and rooms that repeatedly delighted the judges.
This is half a level up. This is the living room that looks out across onto the landscape. So we have secondary bedrooms underneath us that, you know, bring us up to get that view.
And who lives here?
So this is Ian and Jane's house. Jane's family owned the farmhouse, which is just behind us, and this was the stackyard. This was where the hay was stacked at the end of the summer. So this partly explains the form of the building and where it sits in relation to the other agricultural buildings and why we chose the name stackyard for it.
The master bedroom is a lofty perch, a control tower that affords great views over the surrounding countryside and satisfies a major passion of its owner, Ian: birdwatching.
We're slightly hunkered down in this space that, again, has a slightly sheltered quality, but at the same time, you know, like a bird hide where you're not wanting to be seen but want to see. It has that quality about it.
Now you say a bird hide, it makes sense because with your raised parapet and your levels, you do actually get that sort of slot that you'd have in a bird hide.
Yeah.
Just looking around, waiting for them to come.
Yeah, which they will. There's nests just around the corner of house martins. There's house martins there, and around the front there's swift boxes that are built into the facade.
There are 3 other new outbuildings here, one of which is the owner Jane's studio. The judges particularly liked the way Stackyard, like Patrick's house, makes a contribution to the agricultural and historical setting here.
It's really clear as well how you have very different materials, all from the same kind of, what sort of farm language, but yeah, this lovely black corrugated stuff. And then on this building, you do have the kind of timber. This is the first time I can kind of see this kind of apparent concrete. I can see kind of the formwork boards and everything on this.
Which have gone a beautiful grey, which is similar to the concrete. So the whole thing is beginning to blend into the landscape.
The no-nonsense corrugated rural language of Stackyard is something that Meredith has evolved in East Anglia. His practice, Mole Architects, won this competition back in 2004 with the Black House in Ely. The Black House is highly eco-efficient, but Meredith's gone further with Stackyard, using passive house design software to achieve an exceptionally low level of energy consumption.
You see, this is the guts of a passive house. You've got the air handling unit keeping everything kind of warm. You've got water heated by the sun coming in and powering the underfloor heating and being stored for the baths and the showers. And you've got all the rainwater being used to flush all the toilets. That's brilliant.
Stackyard treads imperceptibly lightly on the planet. It's a new and appropriate kind of country house.
Though it borrows heavily from farm buildings, everything about this house has been designed for the client's enjoyment of the land, the wildlife, and ultimately, their golden years. It's a very personal piece of design, and it has within it a lot of warmth.
We've now seen 4 of the 5 houses on the long list. However, there is one more house to look at, and then we'll learn which of the 5 have made it to the shortlist. And this one is a real humdinger. New houses in open countryside don't always have to mimic farmhouses and barns to succeed. The dialogue with the landscape doesn't always have to be an agricultural one. And in searching for a new relationship with place, there are other ideas we should consider. Things like rusty steel, shipping containers, and ziggurats. Yes, that's right. A 4th century BC style Mesopotamian terraced pyramid, near Aylesbury, no less. And editor-in-chief of Elle Decoration, Michelle Agundahin, has been to see it. Flint House sits on the estate of Wadston Manor, the family seat of the Rothschild banking dynasty, and it's designed to look as though a wedge of geological strata has been pushed up through the turf. The simple geometry contains a sequence of rooms that are certainly not open plan. The front door is placed unceremonially on one side and opens onto the kitchen, dining and sitting areas with a private study at the thick end of the wedge. Above, there are 3 bedrooms fitted neatly into the rising volume of the triangle, and the main building is mirrored by the house's baby twin. Despite the almost science fiction scary shape of this building, inside it's remarkably domestic and homely. Familiar rectangular rooms feel comfortably carved out of the big shape. It's all very reassuring. So, who might or could build something as radical as this? Who has the resources to fund it? Of course, if he or she owns something like this, well, then they're going to have inherited some architectural adventurism. In this case, Lord Rothschild.
Good morning.
Hello.
Thank you so much for showing me your house.
Waddesdon Manor was a revelation in its day. Built by Baron Ferdinand de Rothschild in 1889 as a layer cake inspired by almost every French chateau ever built. It was so exciting that Queen Victoria invited herself to see it and its newfangled electric lighting. 125 years later, the Rothschilds are still pushing architectural boundaries.
This house seems to me so remarkable for its shape and the materials it's made of. I need to know, was this in your mind's eye right from the beginning?
No, in fairness to Charlotte Skinner-Catlin, the architect, she had most of the big ideas. But the big idea, which I completely embrace, is that in this beautiful place, where all the streams on the property converge, that it should look somehow like a rock in the landscape.
And it was the geological location of this site that provided the inspiration for the architect Charlotte Skinner-Catlin.
We started looking at geological maps, and there's a chalk fault line that runs from Norfolk through Buckinghamshire down to the South Downs, where it emerges finally in the White Cliffs of Dover. And that became a very intriguing and exciting thing for us.
Charlotte's decision to somehow incorporate flint as the major visible material of this building immediately raised the question, how many builders know anything at all about flint? Since 1989, David Smith's company has been specialising in the conservation and restoration of flint and lime masonry.
What's special about the Flint house is not just the colour change, but also the texture change. The flint at the bottom is worked very little compared with the intense work that went on as the building went up, and gradually ending up in the chalk, which is the 6th layer, to be very smooth. And as the light goes around the building, you can really see different textures, different shadows to the actual building.
The glinting sparkle of this building was achieved by knapping. David and his team hand-broke each one of the 80 tons of flint and then used over 1 million gallets or flint shards to fill the gaps in the mortar. The entire process took 6 men, 8 months. That's 4 man-years of patronage, sustaining a traditional building craft.
Is flint a dying art, or is there a revival going on? Well, we hope the Flint house will encourage more architects and more people to see just how versatile flint can be in a material and how it could be used in a modern building.
I love flint and think it's an incredibly beautiful material. And it's very important that this particular tradition in English building, I think, is preserved and continues.
I'm dying to see inside.
Okay.
Can we go in?
Yeah, sure. Let's go in.
Oh, gosh. Now, this is very dramatic. The building is curious to me because it appears to be a sort of wonderful wedge shape, but then there's half of it seems to be separated from the main mothership.
Yeah,
Why is that?
I mean, first of all, in terms of space, I think it's really nice to have an annex over there where the child that's growing up or whoever can go, or it's a studio. I think it works very well, actually, the complement of that little building near this one.
Flint House is sited at a low point on the estate, meaning there's plenty of water around. So the architect saw a chance to reimagine an historical obsession, the grotto. A stream has been diverted to wind its way through the cave-like middle of the house.
Well, this is a rather extraordinary concept, to have a grotto in the heart of your home with a stream running through it. Most people try and keep water out of the centre of their homes.
Well, we thought it's so beautiful that we would continue the look of the stream around the house. So again, all the time, there's this effort to relate the beauty of the outside to the inside. And I think this particular bit of the house works really extremely well.
This is a wonderfully sort of sedate staircase,
Well,
as if
quite,
we're
yeah, well, there's an
approaching...
excitement at the end. We hope.
Upstairs, the generous windows and balconies again succeed in connecting the house to the countryside around it.
We're right at the very sort of top here, aren't we?
No, it's an amazing experience. I mean, you are in the trees almost, and I think this adds a whole new chapter to the Waddesdon experience, which will give joy and pleasure to, I hope, countless numbers of people in the century ahead.
This house has turned making a connection to the landscape into an art form. Crafting a story out of flint and chalk is inspired. It links the building directly to the very geology of this site. It is quite simply less building than an architectural sculpture for living in.
We've now seen all 5 extraordinary new country homes on the long list, all potential winners of this year's RIBA House of the Year award. A Somerset eco-barn weaves itself into its setting and reinterprets timber craftsmanship. Sussex has just got more beautiful thanks to this elegantly proportioned villa that drinks in the landscape under an origami roof. In East Anglia, there's a fresh and ecological interpretation of the agricultural that owners and house martins love equally. Rural Northern Ireland has been propelled into the future with Patrick's rusty container architecture that redefines a relationship with place. And in Buckinghamshire, the rock has been lifted out of the ground, polished and carved into to make a home. The moment's now arrived to discover which of these 5 houses has made it onto that shortlist. Last year's winner, Chris Loyne, and his fellow judges debated the merits of each candidate for days. But eventually, a decision was reached. So, Chris, tell me about the first project that you put onto the shortlist.
First one has to be this one. It's Flint House. Absolutely beautiful, exquisite bit of construction, design. The detailing on it is fantastic, and it sits within the landscape beautifully. There's another part to the building which isn't shown on this model, which echoes this form but in a smaller scale. And it just sits there in a different lights, morning mist, evening sunlight. It's gorgeous.
The judges also commended Flint House for its poetic form, utter originality, and the power of a simple idea.
It's really exciting that it's been shortlisted because it is a real work of architecture, quite different to anything else that's been, I think, built in this country. Great for you. It's full of inspired ideas, so I think it's really interesting.
But from this week's projects, not 1, but 2 go forward to the final round. So tell me about the next project on your shortlist.
Next project is Sussex House. Fascinating project, hunkered up against a tree belt, tight on the edge of their site.
It very confidently connects out to that landscape, doesn't it?
It certainly does. It wraps a beautiful, beautiful garden. The landscaping is exquisite. It's manicured in some spots, and it's slightly wild in others, and it's got vegetables. So it's all part of the home, part of the house. It's very cleverly integrated, the two.
The RIBA judges also liked the way this somewhat monastic building quietly commands its setting, and reserved special praise for the inspiring atrium.
It's absolutely brilliant to be shortlisted. We're really delighted. And it's a very competitive field. There's some fantastic projects, lots of brilliant buildings, so it's just wonderful that ours has been selected.
Sussex House and Flint House are two outstanding homes. Over the series, we'll continue to search for the remaining houses that'll make it onto the shortlist. And in doing so, we'll come closer to understanding what a house in the 21st century needs to do. Is it possible to put together a list of what makes a great building? Well, 2,000 years ago, the Roman architect Vitruvius tried just that, and that list of his, of just 3 ideas, still remains valuable to architects. He said that good buildings should have firmness, commodity, and delight, by which he meant that they should be really well built and solid and fit for purpose. They should also be easy to use and ergonomic, and they should have something of the heart. They should bring happiness and joy. And I've always thought that great buildings ought to make us feel like better human beings. They ought to lift the spirits, that they should make a contribution to place, but also to our civilization. That is one hell of a list, isn't it? Next time, we go in search of buildings that have solved one of the hardest of architectural problems, building on awkward urban plots. I'm very struck by this view, though. It's more like a sort of planted parkland. Every year, the Royal Institute of British Architects holds a competition to find the UK's best new house. From hundreds of entries, they whittle it down to a long list, then a short list, and finally a winner for this great architectural prize. And this year, for the first time, Grand Designs is along for the ride. So, we'll be taking you behind usually closed doors to see some of the finest new architecture in the country. Wow, that's like a cliff of brick. If that isn't a facade, I don't know what is. To discover why these homes are so special. Whose idea was this?
Mummy's.
God, blimey. And most importantly, what they're like to live in.
Sit there, dangle my legs out, cup of coffee. Perfect.
This series is entirely dedicated to great houses of today, homes from which you can take inspiration, which are the exemplars of where design is heading. And then, at the end of the series, we'll be finding out here exclusively on Channel 4 which one of these houses is the RIBA House of the Year for 2015. Looking at great architecture is something of a dream job, really. A wonderful set of experiences that, frankly, we would like to share with you. In this series, we're exploring some of the best contemporary homes in the UK, all of which are in the running for the Royal Institute of British Architects House of the Year, the BAFTAs of architecture. Oh, wow, this is just brilliant. Each week, we'll visit a variety of homes on the long list, which I've loosely grouped into categories, and find out which of them has made it onto the final shortlist of 7. Our cities are the places where space is at its highest premium, where the architect's brief is to magic space from nowhere, respond to what's called the urban grain, for which read urban jumble, and figure out what to do with those scrappy leftover spaces that are awkward, if not downright uninviting. They say that when the constraints of a design are particularly demanding, that's when you get the best results, which would suggest that the architectural imagination only truly flies when it has a very short and oddly shaped runway. In this programme, we're looking at houses that have all adopted an ingenious approach to space, or rather the lack of it. And the first is in Kew in West London, which is full of polite Victorian terraces. And then you get to this. This powerful, experimental 4-bedroomed house started life as a stubby plot on the site of an old stable block, used for storage and parking in the heart of a conservation area. Now, 2 barn-like pods thrust up and out from behind the old stable brick gables, linked by a rectangular glass walkway. But the really eye-catching thing about this house is the rusty orange industrial sheet steel. It's not surprising that it's home to 2 engineers, Tim and Joe Lucas. Tim.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. A wet day.
Yes.
But,
hello. Come in. This is Joe.
Hi. Joe, how are you?
Lovely to meet you.
And you. Thank you for inviting me around. It's a great building. Well engineered.
Hopefully.
Interestingly engineered.
I think the house could only exist in the way that it does because of the skills that Tim and I have. I think it's definitely a combination of our backgrounds and who we are, and I suppose it happens in any house, is that it's a combination of the people who actually create it.
Yeah.
And I suppose that comes out in what turns up. A little bit strange and odd and...
Yeah. In one of the steel pods that make up this house is the family room and kitchen with children's bedrooms upstairs. The other pod is more private, containing a sitting room and parents' bedroom on the floor above. Both are joined by a long, slim, 2-storey glass box that contains the staircase. But the largest single space is the basement, as big as the entire site, which divides into a workshop for Dad and an indoor playground for the children. The result is a house where rooms ping off in different directions, but where each space feels generous, inventive, light, open, and above all connected to the other spaces. In terms of brief that you gave to the architect, what were the big ideas that you wanted?
I'm from Australia, and one of my criteria was that the house had to not feel like a new build. I wanted it to feel like a house that had a history or could have a history. I want to live in an old castle or something like that.
I think of the building, particularly with the brick walls around it, sort of almost rising like a miniature castle. It's got, and the metal gives it that defensive armoured look. Apart from the shapes of this building, the other memorable aspect of it is this corten steel.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
It actually comes from an industrial background of coal wagons and bridges. But to put it in a conservation area right next to Kew Gardens, which is obviously where we are, it needs a bit more grain and a bit more texture.
What's remarkable is that these huge steel roofs were all prefabricated in a factory.
It was a really surreal experience to see your house in pieces. They actually created the entire house, and so you got to wander through it, and that was just, what a feeling.
We brought them up one by one and lifted them onto the site with a crane.
So it's like sort of modular chunks are made and then kind of pre-assembled.
Lifted that welder together.
Yeah.
We had 2 welders on site for 3 months.
To get approval for such giant rusty steel shapes in a conservation area required a massive charm offensive. How did you swing this with the planners and the community? How did you get the consent to build this?
I think because the road is quite eclectic, that's really helped in terms of the context that we could do something bold and modern, and we ended up getting unanimous consent.
This allowed Joe and Tim to design a playful and bespoke house for their family, 6-year-old Alex and 8-year-old Rosalind. Each room is like a cabinet of curiosities. Doors double as screens for cupboards. Most elements are built in and made by either the architect Stuart Piercy or Tim's brother Sam. Even Rosalind has designed her own ingenious sloping clothes rail.
There's hardly any room for a straight one.
Yeah.
I don't want them all to be in the drawer so I can't see them. So I thought, why not put it sloped on the wall?
It's brilliant, because it means you can put long dresses at one end, and then shorter dresses and skirts, and then finally socks at the other end, yeah? At the short end. This seems to me to be a house of... it's a bit of a house of fun. So have I discovered everything there is yet
No.
to see in it? What do you mean? Why are you giggling?
Something in the basement.
Something in the basement I should go and see?
Yeah.
Okay. Where are we going? It's downstairs to the basement, isn't it?
No. There's something
What?
secret behind this door.
What's this? Oh, no, it's a slide.
Go
brilliant.
in legs first.
What? Yeah, I wasn't going to go head first. Am I allowed to go down it? Oh, my heavens.
Yeah.
Bye. Whose idea was this?
Mummy's.
God, blimey. I don't know where I'm going. Oh, God. Oh.
How was that?
That was, yeah, that was good. It's this sense of fun, inventiveness and the unexpected which appealed to the RIBA judges. So as to avoid the issues of overlooking neighbours' homes, light is carefully introduced, not least from light wells.
I can drink in great draughts of cold, filtered, chilled light. It's very refreshing.
The central connecting walkway, however, is all glass. The sense of exposure here is from all sides. So up here?
Up here.
This is like walking across a bridge, a steel bridge. I can see why an engineer would build this. It's quite good fun.
Yeah.
Oh, and this is another beautifully crafted space, this.
Yeah, this is our...
Timber line, like a little library up here.
The landing. This is where we sit when the girls have a bath.
Because girls do spend a long time in the bath.
They do, yeah. So we sit in this armchair, we can watch the sun go down over the chimney pots opposite.
Planning restrictions meant they couldn't just put big windows in their roof, and so they devised a lovely and subtle solution. Camouflage.
The perforations come from looking underneath the tree, seeing the points of light, and then what the architects did is abstracted that into a pattern of square-cut holes. When the sun comes out, we get this glorious dappled light through the space.
Oh, and as you speak, look.
The clouds part. Yeah.
How fantastic is that? There is poetry, wit and craftsmanship within the tough, rusty urban armour of this place. The little perforations are the brainchild of architect Stuart Piercy.
We photographed a tree canopy from below looking up, and then we placed small squares on every leaf in the tree manually. This drawing kind of shows all of the small squares placed individually on that tree image. You upload a drawing to the computer and it traces around the lines, and effectively the water jet cutter will just cut whatever's on the drawing.
Amazing as it sounds, what they use to cut the steel is high-pressure water. At around 20 times the pressure of a car power washer wand, water jet cutting can match plasma and laser cutting, but doesn't produce heat that could distort metal.
The water jet cuts in a water bed. Underneath the water bed there's a layer of sand, and then there's lots of steel sheets, because it's so powerful, the jet, that it would just cut straight through itself, effectively, unless it has this great big bed. You can see here on the screen, those are the squares at 1 to 1, and it's cutting within a millimetre of those squares. So it's entirely predictable what you get from the machine. You can take an image with your digital camera and you can trace over that image. You can cut it out of anything. You know, you can cut stone, steel.
The perforations were just one of the many ingenious ideas that went into this house. Britain has a proud tradition of engineering, and its values, I believe, are in this building. Values like the desire to experiment, albeit pragmatically, to push at boundaries, and goodness me, this building does push that way and that way and that way. And, dare I say it, by that traditional British engineering phrase, work in progress. But it would be wrong, wouldn't it, to simply ascribe engineering values to this building, because it is also magical and adventurous, and I, for one, will be leaving it with a smile on my face. This is the first of several remarkable urban houses vying to win the prestigious title of House of the Year. But it's facing stiff competition, because the rest of today's houses all respond with equal inventiveness to the challenges of seemingly impossible sites. What this building teaches me is that space doesn't equal size, which is very clever. Look, I just have to say this. I don't think of this series as some kind of worthy investigation into where architecture is, although obviously if some things rub off and leave a lasting impression along the way, all the better. But it does strike me that the reason I'm standing here and the reason you're watching is because all of us enjoy looking round houses. We all enjoy a bit of snooping, especially when they're beautiful. It will be the Royal Institute of British Architects who'll have the final say, to pick the one winner. Meanwhile, joining me to poke our noses around these great houses, our editor-in-chief of Elle Decoration, Michelle Lagundahin.
Now, this is very dramatic.
And architect, Zach Munro.
It's a very precise fire, isn't it? It's sort of, you can have the heat, or you can have the heat.
Indeed.
Our next urban house is in Northern Ireland, in the city of Belfast. All the houses we're visiting this week have flourished despite really difficult sites. Some scraps of land are awkwardly shaped. Others are difficult to access or have contaminated ground. You might even have bought one with a river running through it. Victoria Road is in a suburb of Belfast called Holywood. It's on a site which no one in their right mind would think of building on, because it's a steeply wooded valley with a stream. No one, that is, apart from owner Zoe Wilcox, who Zach went to visit.
Zoe.
Hi.
Hiya.
Come on in.
Thank you very much. Wow, what a lovely house.
Zoe and her husband Tony have boldly built this striking house, sitting right across the river.
When we first came to view it, there was land on one side of the river that was for sale, and we saw this wilderness over on the other side. And we thought, wow, let's go over the river.
Really?
Yeah.
That's your first thought?
First thought. I remember standing there on the site and phoning my poor husband and later saying, I want to build a house and I want to go over the river.
And he was up for it?
He was up for it. For us, it was all about the magic and the beauty of the site and bridging the two sides and making it one whole.
The main entrance to this long white chocolate bar of a house is halfway down and leads into the kitchen, which sits directly over the river. Leading off from here is the snug and a guest bedroom on the near bank. And in the other direction, the dining room and a sunken living room connected by a long corridor. On the far bank, there's enough of a drop to add the family's bedrooms underneath and a patio to the rear. The effect is a sequence of unfolding semi-connected spaces, corresponding to the rhythm of the windows along the south face of the building, which draw in sunlight and offer delightful views over the stream.
Oh, wow. It really is a bridge. It feels really big. It feels like you've got a massive garden. And with this bridge, you're kind of taking ownership of it.
Well, we didn't want it to feel like a site of two halves. We wanted it to feel very much connected.
The RIBA judges singled out Victoria Road for exploiting the site to give maximum garden and for skillfully straddling the ravine.
If you look at bridges, and I've looked at quite a few when we were researching the house, the metal construction of a bridge, there's a natural rhythm.
And it does from this angle. I'd start to read it as a bridge. And it's just a very different way of dealing with your landscape. It's deliberately artificial. It's not natural. It's not pretending to be natural. That's more respectful.
On one hand, yes, it's a big block of grey, but there's a certain, I think, elegance to it.
The architect called this a simple object resting in a clearing, but to achieve that called for complex foundations. It took 6 months of extensive groundworks, costing 20% of their budget, to provide enough support for the bridge's structure.
We had to pile everywhere rather than traditional foundations to give it, well, permanence, so it didn't fall into the river.
Despite all the hard foundation work, what Zoe was after was actually a very simple experience, inspired by her love of minimalist architecture.
I love the pared-back, simple approach to architecture that doesn't shout in your face, that you discover it as you occupy the space.
Helping Zoe to realise her ideas was the architect Alistair Hall.
It's a house that's trying to be simple, elegant, achieve some kind of timelessness.
This minimal kind of building is hard to pull off when the engineering dominates the design. Every structural component must be hidden. What the judges liked about Victoria Road was the rich way that the original idea was worked up. It's a bridge that's transformed by materials like the terrazzo flooring, which stretches the entire length of the ground floor.
It's lovely stuff, this.
Yeah, I love it. We're very happy with it, and it hides all manner of sins. It's very easy to...
What do you mean?
To maintain.
Oh, OK.
Yeah.
I thought you'd buried someone under it.
No.
Terrazzo is at least as old as the Romans. They used leftover marble chippings mixed with lime to strengthen their floors and used abrasive stones to hand polish them. Today, machines do the grinding and polishing, and the choice of chippings or aggregate is vast.
Now they use more Italian marbles, using glass, mother of pearl, so it's just moved on.
Terry Fagan's family have been laying terrazzo floors since the 1950s, passing on the skills and techniques down the generations. Essentially, the process is lay a concrete subfloor, pour a screed topcoat, and then, while it's still wet, toss in your beautiful jewel-like chippings.
It's up to your feeding chickens or sowing grass seed. It's just this way it's been done since my grandfather's time.
They grind the floor back to cut and polish the chips using specialist polishing machines. It can take 3 weeks to achieve this kind of breathtaking gloss, but it lasts.
There's floors my grandfather put in 60, 70 years ago, and they're still as good as the day they went in. They're perfect, so it's a lifetime job.
The stream dictated the engineering, but it also delivers great pleasure downstairs.
You've got the drama of being suspended above the river upstairs, and this is where it gets really intimate. You can see the underbelly of the house and the structure, and you get an aspect of the house that actually only Tony and I really get to see. I guess maybe because I experienced the journey of building the house, I enjoy looking at the structure. It reminds me of actually what we went through, and you get a real sense of actually the house bridging across the river. We lie here and open the windows, and the sound of the river trickling past is lovely.
The passionate involvement of the client, Zoe, is what makes this project stand out. Because without great clients, you don't get great buildings.
We've had great fun doing it. And it has been an adventure, and our children, it's been fantastic for them to experience doing something brave and bold and doing something a bit different, hopefully worthwhile at the same time.
The judges take the role of the client very seriously, and always have. Back in 2006, it was Holly Barn, designed by Knox Bavin Architects in rural Norfolk, that scooped the top prize. It sits on 2/3 of an acre and was commissioned by Jenny Rogers and her late husband, Alan, with a very specific brief.
Behind the choice of the layout was essentially Alan, my husband, had to be able to navigate the whole house in his wheelchair. The rest of it really was about how could we make it a house where it was very easy to entertain, and yet you could close off parts of it and you could be private. I think it just worked wonderfully.
This building won because it broke new ground and addressed many questions, including how to design for disability and beauty, how to control semi-open plan large spaces, and just how can we evolve the vernacular in new rural architecture. It's ambitious, inventive and innovative, and it responds sensitively to its setting.
Because there'd been a barn here before, we wanted a modern barn and also something that would fit with the landscape and would sit in the landscape, looking as if it blended in with the landscape, that used natural materials as far as possible. So that's why it's clad in wood, and quite unusually, I think the roof is wood as well.
This house seems to have touched the many people who've come to know it. I too have been an admirer.
Kevin McCloud described the house as a poetic exercise in wood, which is a very nice compliment, but personally I think it's a lot more than that. I think it's just a wonderful building all round. I'm very proud to have commissioned it.
Holly Barn clearly shows how important client involvement is. So how will our urban houses, all with passionate owners and difficult sites, measure up? There are 2 more to go, and then we'll find out which of these homes have made it to the shortlist of 7 finalists of House of the Year. Restraint has inspired some of the greatest architecture on the planet. I mean, limitless land and a bottomless budget, they do not usually produce great buildings, as any Las Vegas taxi driver will tell you. Whereas, with limited cash and a tiny site, you have to begin to think inventively. Hence the need for wit and the imagination, 2 of the sharpest tools in the designer's box, together with, of course, a magic wand. I mean, how else do you make small as beautiful as this? Somewhere in this East London street is one of those small conjured spaces. Courtyard House is built on a tiny plot that used to be a builder's yard. So this has to be it because the paint is new. So it says 2A there. Ooh, and we're in. Oh, no house. Tidy yard. This is not the way in. Bike store. Ah, front door. Can you see the... Oh, there's a gap. Not the front door. It's another space, another courtyard. Past... What's this building? Little office. A beautifully planted garden. It all feels a bit like walking through the wardrobe in the Chronicles of Narnia and discovering a miniature new world. Entering from the street, there's first a yard with a large store, which is also the back of the office. Past that is the second open space, the beautiful garden. The house beyond is essentially L-shaped, containing on the ground floor the kitchen and living areas, with space for a guest room. Sitting on top of these is a single cube, the master bedroom, which looks out over a light well and a terrace at the rear. In this house, space is the name of the game. And whichever way you look, it feels like daylight is being drawn into the building, adding to the overall impression of airiness. Hello.
Hello, Kevin.
I'm lucky enough to be meeting the owners, Tom and David. This is gorgeous. What's lovely is that it doesn't hit you straight off the street. It's not like a front garden, it's like a sort of, almost like a hallway, you know. And then you come through and then there's a whole sequence of little space before you get to the front door.
Yeah. I mean, that first space is really functional. It's where bins and bikes and all that stuff is. And then you enter this space and it's a complete contrast.
It's a lovely transition, I think, coming home at the end of the day, going through those phases, and by the time you've reached the house, you actually feel quite relaxed and you're ready to be home.
Different world. And you just articulated that in what? In 15, 20 yards. Not only was the builder's yard an unpromising size and shape, there were lots of planning restrictions about what they could build because of the neighbours.
We were very limited in terms of where we could put windows and what the views were, and we said we got a frosted window upstairs, which, because of the view.
Which is why it's all the more amazing that the architect, David, this is his first house, is in the running for a top architectural prize. The building is very simple. It's L-shaped. There's a block here. There's the bedroom there and the staircase. If we can take this lid off. Oh, beautiful. They're all straight lines. That makes the building very straightforward and pretty cheap to build. These odd remaining courtyard shapes here, here and here, well, those would be very expensive to build out. And what they've done with them is to take advantage of them and turn them into these beautiful pocket gardens, pocket spaces. Now, I'm intrigued. It's a series of rectangles on what is obviously a site which is not rectangular. It's a weird shape. And would you not have been tempted to use that space that you got out there as more accommodation space? Is it?
It was very tempting, but part of the brief was to respect the neighbours, allow as much light into their property, but also allow as much light into this house. And that's the thing that does. It provides a light well.
Yeah. This pocket garden is another example of the clever thinking used to make their home feel brighter and bigger.
The result of it has actually created a very private space, even though we're overlooked, just surrounded by 9 neighbours.
Wow. Including
a church and a Chinese takeaway, actually.
To add to the mix.
Yes.
When they first started building, I wasn't entirely sure how they could fit a house in such a small space. It's a lot bigger than some of the houses that they've been building in East London recently. So, yeah, it's really good.
Bearing in mind the constraints of the site, the judges loved how light and airy the house feels, and how the 4 pocket gardens are like extra outdoor rooms. When I first saw a photograph of this place, I was so struck by the use of these bricks. Now, this is a standard brick, isn't it? It's just a corner brick.
It's the way that we've laid it which makes it unusual. So normally they're laid horizontally, and by making them vertical, it almost feels like the wall's woven. We wanted to reflect the brick that was on the site originally.
The black cladding kind of slides into the building to remind you of how it looks from the outside.
Very true.
I like the ways they've managed to squeeze every last drop of space and storage out of a small and simple design. Oh, it's a lot bigger up here than I thought it would be. I thought you'd have a small, enclosed, tiny cell on the roof of this. But
no, it's a good space.
It is, isn't it? I'm very struck by this view, though. It's more like a sort of planted parkland. It's a hidden beauty, isn't it?
We're not looking into anyone's windows directly.
No.
We've got such a long view down there that we can have a big window.
Working with David to see past the problems of this small site was his architectural partner, Jonathan Dallas. They have a track record of working on commercial projects and urban spaces.
We very much sort of like to reimagine unloved spaces. Public realm projects and public art projects were the beginnings for us, and then we got the opportunity to obviously do this project as our first house, and so the kind of two mix quite nicely. And I guess challenge people's perception of what space can offer, particularly a tight space like this.
Yeah, what this building teaches me is that space doesn't equal size.
No.
That space is something that you craft, that you kind of control, and that a sense of space is something that can be magicked out of a tiny plot, which you've done.
Yeah.
Which is very clever. What a delight and a revelation. the small magical journey I took from the street to get here has expanded my mind. This place shows you what beauty can be imaginatively wrought from a scrappy little site.
There must be thousands of sites like this in London, these little pockets that people think aren't commercially viable to develop. But for someone who wants to live in London and be able to commute into town, they have so much potential.
So, how can this beautiful, this modest little building compete against those big heavy hitters, those large villas in open countryside, and hope to win this award? Well, 3 reasons, I think. The first is there is space for modesty in architecture. Well, partly because actually the modest small building is often harder to do. The second reason is that in this glorious little building, there is a sort of seamless integration between the incidental spaces, the interiors, the exteriors. It's all the work of 2 or 3 individuals. It's the coming together of a small number of people to collaborate perfectly. That's something you just couldn't find on a large project. And the third reason is that this clever little building really articulates space well, and it's a great demonstration that actually space doesn't always equal big. Space in the city is something that the RIBA judges have seen cleverly articulated in many of this year's entries. Among the dozens of contenders for House of the Year, they also see many small but noteworthy projects. We've picked a few to show you. This first one's a quiet and curvy extension to a Grade 2 listed Georgian building in Wapping in East London. The brief was for more space, to contain a drawing room on the ground floor and an extra bedroom and bathroom above.
By placing the extension where we did, we managed to capture some of the late afternoon sun. So as the sun comes round in the evening, you get a room that's filled with sunlight.
The planning restrictions attached to its Grade 2 listing meant it had to be as unobtrusive as possible.
The materials chosen for the new part, some of them are quite old materials. For instance, the windows are of bronze, but the most important is clearly the choice of brick. The bricks we chose are a standard off-the-shelf brick, and we colour washed the outside to tone down the variation between the extension and the original house.
Whether it's an historic listed building or a reinvention of a difficult site, building in the city throws up a set of very high-pressure problems. So far, our urban houses have met these challenges beautifully. Now it's time for the last of our remarkable city homes.
Gosh, this is extraordinary.
Before the House of the Year judges announce which of them will make the shortlist. I believe we can all instinctively recognise when something is well designed and well built. Our bodies, our hands and eyes can detect a well-proportioned space and a comfortable door handle. Our subconscious mind relaxes our body and slows the heartbeat when we stand in a building which is flattering and engages us. We can all be critics, and we can all seek out buildings which improve our well-being. Hell, some people even get round to commissioning one from an architect. Our final house in West London is at first sight an unlikely vehicle for this all-important feel-good design factor. Michelle Gunderhin went to visit. Tucked away off the street and surrounded by flats and houses on all sides is this fortress-like home built on the site of a former taxi garage.
Well, this is intriguing. It's not really giving much away. So I'm wondering, why is this a potential House of the Year? Gosh. Wow, this is extraordinary.
This site is very overlooked. So instead of inserting windows in the old walls, the architects placed a horizontal sliver of glass on top of them, and then pushed the rest of the windows up into the roof. What a masterstroke. all down to the architects Tatiana von Prussen and Jessica Reynolds, whose resourcefulness and imagination here caught the judge's attention.
Hello, welcome. Congratulations on this extraordinary building. Straight away, it strikes me that someone had to take a real leap of faith to even think about building a house in this site.
Yeah, but our practice is quite used to dealing with funny little leftover bits of land that have these kind of very strange geometries, surrounded by neighbours, needing to dig, no exterior windows, all of that kind of thing. So we're quite used to dealing with that. But this house is probably one of the ones we're most proud of.
This 4-bedroom family home looks complicated, but the roof is the key to the layout. Each vault corresponds to a similarly shaped area below: living room, kitchen and dining area. Not so much rooms as zones in an almost open-plan building. Perhaps the biggest surprise here is that this is also an upside-down house with an extra floor beneath for bedrooms, all lit by 2 large light wells that punch right down to the basement level. The vaults are a beautiful geometric device to bring light down into the house and which also minimise the roof's profile. As a rain screen for the tricky, awkward-shaped pyramids, the architects considered using zinc. But the roof's shape was too fiddly and expensive to cover. So instead, they went for a cheaper and more robust single-ply waterproof roofing membrane, often used on flat roofs. The membrane was flexible enough to deal with the roof's tight corners and sharp angles, and it's sleek. The roof design is such an inventive, fun alternative to windows, you don't read it as a compromise. But planning restrictions meant they just couldn't build up. So in order to add another story for bedrooms, they dug down.
Gosh, this is not what I was expecting. How deep did you build down here?
We've dug down about 2 metres to gain the extra space below.
And yet I don't feel subterranean at all.
I think one of the ways we've managed to achieve that is through creating these double height spaces and these very tall floor-to-ceiling heights through the corridor.
Having maxed out on the site's space for a 4-bedroom home, it left little room for a garden. 2 sunken courtyards take its place, essential to bring light into the basement.
Oh, wow. You've got the double height window, the amazing super skylight, the kind of white bouncing the light around.
Yeah, it's really nice because the playroom here is connected to the garden, so the kids kind of run in and out during the summer.
There are, despite the pressures for space and light here, several opportunities to enjoy the outdoors.
One of the key concerns was to try to bring as much as possible the outside into the house. And one example of that is this large sliding glazing door here, which actually goes back into a pocket in the wall.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's completely disappearing.
It's quite fun, isn't it? And it really turns the whole eating area into basically an outdoor eating area.
You're not joking about being overlooked. I mean, your neighbours are right here, aren't they?
Yeah.
So I wonder what some of the 24 neighbours think about the new kid on the block.
I haven't heard any complaints. I think everyone really likes it. It's very special. It doesn't block any of the light in this area. None of the residents around here feel that there's something that's been imposed upon them. I think they've done a great job in a conservation area to do something like this, which is really a clever design.
This vaulted house is a stunning family home. For me, its success is down to the intelligent use of light in what many would consider a really unpromising site. It's an elegant response to common urban building problems. But more than that, it gives something back to the neighbourhood in the form of this exquisitely sculpted roof.
So, which of these 4 delightful and extraordinary homes go forward? Kew House, which hunkers under a rusty steel shell. Victoria Road, a house that's a bridge that's a house. Courtyard,
an unfolding conjuring trick of spaces, and the vaulted house, which billows up and out. You can vote for your own winner at channel4.com/House of the Year. But what do the judges think? It's now time to find out which of these 4 projects has made it onto the coveted shortlist for the 2015 House of the Year Award. Covering the length and breadth of the country, visiting houses of all shapes and sizes, it's been an impossibly hard task for the judges. But after much deliberation, architect Jonathan Manser has the results. So, Jonathan, tell me about the first house that you've shortlisted.
Right, this first one is Kew House. They've made these 2 steel tent shapes, which are redolent of the London street gable-ended buildings. Because it's this rusting steel, they're completely alien to the brick and slate surroundings, but they've got exactly the same sort of colours and tones and warmth.
And it sounds like you enjoyed that, the way in which it's slightly game-changing, and it is a game. It's kind of playing with ideas and methods of construction.
That sort of game-changing thing is how you reinterpret what a London street looks like by using different materials. And in the process, you're recreating some of the warmth and texture of a London street.
So Kew, this delightful, inventive experiment in domestic living, is the first of this week's houses to make the final shortlist of just 7.
I think we feel quite stunned by it in some respects. Even in a conservation area, you have this opportunity to create something very different, and it still honours the area.
But which of the other 3 will join it?
Jonathan, tell me about the next house you put on the shortlist.
The next house is Vaulted House. What they've really thought out here is that each of these vaults isn't just a random shape. Each shape corresponds to what's going on below it. So this one here is over the entrance area and over the stairs, and that lights the stair. This one is over this space here. Another one over the study. So the light coming down on each of these spaces. And then the really nice little touch, which I really enjoy, is the layout of the floorboard inside corresponds to the vaults.
Yeah.
There's a simple solution to a sort of apparently intractable problem of how to make a house that's completely landlocked a pleasant space to be in. And they've made it into a magical space.
Its architects have devised an uplifting and wonderful home on a seemingly impossible urban site.
We're really delighted to be on the shortlist. Vaulted House is a really unique project. We spent so much time designing and perfecting the roof.
I think it also works really well in the context of its surroundings. It gives something back to the community. People have something interesting and exciting to look down onto, a kind of piece of art.
What makes a great building? Well, most people agree that it should speak of its time. It should speak of its place and its context. And it should also speak of the people that use it and commission it. And both these shortlisted houses demonstrate all these qualities in spades and more. They contain moments of beauty and wit and imagination. In other words, delight captured sometimes in a quiet corner where you can sit and read a book, sometimes in the dramatic theatricality of a double-height void plunging down to a basement courtyard, or just a glimpse of the sky through a perfectly placed rooflight. They make you feel like a better human being. Next time, 5 more outstanding modern homes. I love these little sort of incidental moments, including a pristine villa and a fortress of luxury. Every year, the Royal Institute of British Architects holds a competition to find the UK's best new house. From hundreds of entries, they whittle it down to a long list, then a short list, and finally a winner for this great architectural prize. And this year, for the first time, Grand Designs is along for the ride.
So, we'll be taking you behind usually closed doors to see some of the finest new architecture in the country.
Wow, that's like a cliff of brick. If that isn't a facade, I don't know what is.
So far, we've seen remarkable country villas.
This is the entry into the double height space.
And houses that rework tiny urban plots.
I'm very struck by this view, though. It's a hidden beauty, isn't it? This series is entirely dedicated to great houses of today, homes from which you can take inspiration, which are the exemplars of where design is heading.
This time, we're going to be looking at another 5 modern houses, all built with great craftsmanship.
I love these little sort of incidental, moments.
And later, we'll find out which of them has made it onto the shortlist to be in the running for House of the Year 2015.
Looking at great architecture is something of a dream job, really. A wonderful set of experiences that, frankly, we would like to share with you.
So far, 4 outstanding homes have been shortlisted for this equivalent of the BAFTAs of architecture. Joining me to explore 5 more contenders are Editor-in-Chief of Elle Decoration, Michelle Gunderhin.
This is extraordinary.
And architect Zach Munro.
Wow. It's great to come in and have a proper entrance.
One of the things I'm most excited about in this year's long list is the number of homes that are beautifully made, crafted, in other words. And in the 21st century, that word, crafted, has the same meaning as it did to William Morris or John Ruskin in the middle of the 19th century. They sought simplicity and truth in the well-made thing. And so today, beautifully crafted homes are usually best when they are uncomplicated and where they occasionally bear the mark of their maker.
Our first house presents exactly that simplicity to the world. It's set in the village of Mackera in rural Ulster.
So what do you build on a prominent site on the edge of a very conservative, traditional village in Northern Ireland? Well, apparently, you build this.
This gleaming 2-storey home is a 21st century version of a traditional, long, whitewashed Ulster home. In plan, it's as though 2 agricultural sheds have been added to over the years and linked by a wedgy lump in the middle.
Wow. This is a blank of a wall. It's like 2 barns, or rather the ghost of 2 barns sitting in the morning mist.
Downstairs in the larger barn, there's a large, open-plan living, dining and kitchen area, a study and a sitting room. Upstairs, there are 4 family bedrooms. The triangular music room in the middle links to the second barn, which has a large guest bedroom, utility room and a garage. The house was commissioned by Simon, who works in finance, and his wife, Aileen, who grew up in Mackera, and it's now home to children, Neve, Emmett and Molly.
Hi.
Hi. Lovely to meet you.
Aileen, yeah?
Yes.
Simon. How pleased to meet you.
Pleased to meet you.
Oh, what a great view you got through that building. So we're stood here then. This is like a triangular bit of the building in between the 2 barns.
That's right.
You come in and it narrows down to that point out there.
Yeah.
Lovely.
No, most of the time spent in the kitchen. In the kitchen.
Through here?
Just through here. Yep.
Heavens. What a great room. It pulls you that way, doesn't it?
That's right.
Out into the landscape.
The RIBA judges praised the quality of finish, craftsmanship and detail in this building. The house subtly reworks the modest style of local farm buildings, which often have blank, windowless gable ends facing the road. The same stark blankness is repeated at the rear, dissolving the difference between front and back. What did you have in your mind when you started?
We wanted a contemporary style, but we wanted it very much to fit in.
And that matters to you, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Because your family
yes.
are here. Did you use a local builder?
Yeah, the builder we used was, he was exceptional in terms of he's a local man as well, third generation of builders, and his attention to detail was second to none.
The project ran smoothly under the watchful eye of Belfast architect Kieran McGonigal, who drew inspiration from traditional farm buildings and their multiple openings. Kieran's practice, McGonigal-McGrath, also sourced some of their ideas from contemporary sheds too. But this is a house. It's not built like a shed or barn. There are hidden gutters for the sleek zinc roof to drain into. The perfect render is dirt repellent and self-cleaning. And the oh-so-important junctions of elements and surfaces in this building are faultless. In the Irish tradition, this is a concrete house, so there are no cracks. The floors are of shimmering terrazzo, granite, and enormous planks of timber.
One of the things we really loved was with the builder and the architect was we wanted attention to detail, we wanted quality.
And even in the granite sills that you can see, the lines match up from inside to outside, and all those small details, I think, come together.
Does that detail give you pleasure?
It does. It's a strange thing to say, and I probably deny it, but it does.
These look like they're designed for perching and for putting knickknacks on. Not that you've got many of those. What are they made from?
They're made from granite.
Are they?
So, yep, so they're granite benches, and
nice.
It's
got a polish underneath.
It's the same granite as you use on the sills and outside. And
so it is.
And it's actually quarried from up in the mountains there.
The Mourne granite is renowned for its quality and fine grey colour. Granite, of course, is one of the most durable materials available. It has to be cut with diamond blades.
There is advantages in having the like of Mourne granite in as sills or thresholds, because using ordinary concrete products certainly will diminish and weather away at a much faster pace. The like of granite will be there, I would say, forever, but certainly give it 100, 200, 300 years.
I suppose we think about craftsmanship traditionally as being about enrichment, complicated detailing, but here, the craftsmanship all lies in the handling of the materials and the way they meet. For example, here, a flawless joint between the timber and between the timber and the metal and the polished terrazzo and honed upstand, all meeting with no gaps, with sort of aerospace precision. And those lines, of course, are, in order to appreciate that, have to be carried through the building again and again, through every detail. The corollary of that is, of course, you do need to completely hide your shit. View of the village from here.
That's one of my favourite things about the house, is the connection with the village through this window, and the way that the architects have designed the pedestrian entrance.
Was it up the steps through those walls, yeah?
I think it makes the house very friendly and open and part of the village.
Yeah. Do people think that here? Is that a commonly held view? Do they see it as a friendly place?
Hopefully.
See you as friendly people?
Yes.
More north lights then from these great skylights above the staircase. I suppose you value the light here, don't you?
Yes.
In the weather that you have. Where do we head? Great long corridor, beautiful. The kids' bedroom's off here. In this cool interior, it's a relief to find the odd splash of colour in the children's bedrooms. Oh, great barn doors again.
They provide great storage.
And that view down. I love these little sort of incidental, the moments you catch yourself finding in this building. It's great. And at the end of the hallway is the substantial master bedroom. It almost looks, forgive me, as though nobody's here. I mean, there's no bedside table, there's no alarm clock. This is how you live.
It is. Simon would probably like a bedside table. We just haven't got round to getting one yet.
Okay. Everything is done in the same 2 tones of grey. And that's something you really like,
yeah, we
obviously.
Love it. Yeah.
We do?
Yeah. Good.
I think it keeps the building bright and calm.
No, I feel very proud of this house. I still get a real sort of warm sense when I sort of come around that corner from the pub and you see the silhouette of it, and it's just, I love what we've created here. It's,
fantastic.
Yeah.
What a lovely way to experience a building. Fantastic piece of architecture, walking home from the pub.
Yes.
So standing here, looking at the back of the house, at least I think it's the back of the house, it is just as ambiguous, just as blank, really, as the front. Indeed, if it is the front. And that's the interesting thing about the outside of this building, its ambiguity. The fact that driving through this village, anybody might think, is that a cowshed? Is it a super glamorous farm? Is it an art gallery? No, it's a house. Never judge a book by its cover, and for that matter, never judge a building by its facade, no matter which one it is. In this journey into 21st century craftsmanship, we have 4 more extraordinary houses to explore.
Oh, wow.
It's said that fashion is for people who don't have style. This explains why I'm perfectly happy to wear socks with sandals. But equally, let's not confuse taste with good design, because good design is not fashion, it's not branding or styling. Good design is pragmatic and it's problem solving. It's a process of refining our world so that it's more comfortable, it's more engaging, more flattering. And a great piece of design, whether it's a car, a dress or a house, should make us feel good. It's why I enjoy buildings. They make me feel good inside, they make me feel younger, sexier. I am really enjoying looking round the brilliant homes that are in the running for the RIBA House of the Year award. In this programme, I'm focusing on where the craftsmanship lies in 21st century architecture. There is an almost anti-crafts sentiment in modernism, a rejection of the handmade in favour of the machine-made. The houses in this programme, they straddle that tension between the creative crafts and the machine modern. These are the kind of seductive houses we're used to seeing in films and in glossy adverts. We naturally associate them with a sort of international sense of glamour. In fact, maybe we should give them a new collective name, International Glamour Homes. Our next house promises exactly that. A slice of Hollywood glitz cut into a hillside in Hampstead, commissioned by film director Medina Ruzian and wife Ellie, an interior designer. This handsome house is tailor-made for them and their 2 children. It is cool, relaxed, flexible and theatrical. It is a grand treehouse in the woods. Editor-in-chief of Elle Decoration, Michelle Gunderhin, is paying them a visit.
Oh, wow.
The route in leads you straight into another world via a small bridge over a cascading stream to the front door.
Hello.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Hello.
Hi.
I really do feel like I'm on the threshold of a kind of brave, new and rather sexy modern universe. Can I come in?
Sexy universe, I like the sound of that. Please, please, please.
The front door opens onto the middle floor of this dramatic 3-storey house to reveal an expansive view over Hampstead Heath.
Wow, what an exceptional view. You've really framed it here, haven't you? But where do you hang out?
Downstairs. Downstairs.
The balustrade overlooks a double-height space in which sits the living, dining and kitchen areas below.
Well, this is impressively dramatic, isn't it? Wow. So when you come home, you come straight down into this space and you feel all your worries and cares drop away, I imagine.
And that view just
out there, trees. It's really, really quite special.
The house has 3 floors. The lower level contains a generous living and dining area, which has been partially excavated out of the hillside. The middle floor has an office and the pool deck, while the top floor cantilevers out over the garden and provides 4 bedrooms with carefully directed windows and balconies that focus the views.
How did it come about that you've commissioned this extraordinary piece of architecture?
We're after a quality of life, really. With the kids and us, and I work from home, so, and I just wanted more space.
Yeah.
More space that is not, you have to climb, 5 floors to get to it.
Because this is a very lateral house, I feel.
Well, yeah.
Mehdi spent years working in LA, and that Californian lifestyle clearly influenced the design.
You really held on to this idea of this sort of Californian ideal of indoor-outdoor, but at the same time, the reality is we're in Britain. So you've countered that with all these like wonderful warm textures, warm colours to get that kind of balance.
We had a lot of vintage pieces, vintage furniture, and we were using those as reference to the other newer elements that were coming into the house, like, for example, the handrail, that sort of brushed antique brass effect.
The brief was to make a friendly, open, light-filled space that was ideal for entertaining. This is a family that loves to party, and the RIBA judges liked the way the architects, Stanton Williams, have responded to that need. They also liked the way this place sits like a nest in the trees, crisp, defensive and reticent outside, with a softer and domestic centre.
When we've had friends visiting on a winter day, they're standing here, they're looking out. We've had comments that, gosh, I feel like I'm in Yosemite. When they go upstairs to the bedrooms and you've got that feeling of a treehouse almost, they're like, gosh, I feel like I'm in a Scandinavian spa. And on hot days, when the sun's shining, we've got the pool open, the kids are splashing out, we've got, great music on, you feel like you're in Bali or Mexico, so it really transports you. Or LA. It just, that feeling of transportation and that sort of playful element we love.
So this really is an international glamour home with wings. But getting a project like this to truly fly is never easy. Mehdi and Ellie had their share of problems. They bought the site just after the 2008 financial crisis, and then the builder went bust, but not before demolishing the original house.
All right, it wasn't much of a building, but still, it had a value. When that was demolished, we were left with basically a pile of rubble. There we were.
It's starting to sound like a bit of a catalogue of disasters. Did you ever have a moment when you just thought, we've made a terrible, terrible mistake and I want to back out now?
Well, no, because our hands were tied. We couldn't do anything, At least if the previous house was still there, then we could have reconsidered, but we had no choice. And fortunately, we got there.
If there is one word for this challenge, would be keep going.
Their determination and their architect's genius has yielded an imaginative home of fantasy, replete with craftsmanship and fine detail, and a generous dollop of home comfort.
I'm so happy here. I love my space. I look forward to opening that door and hearing the water running, and if it was a beautiful summer day, hear the kids in the pool and having fun.
And was that what you expected? Did you have that in your mind's eye, or has it just been more than you ever imagined?
I think it's turned out to be nicer than what we imagined, to be honest.
It's been pleasantly a much nicer surprise than we thought it would be. It's a real privilege to be here.
Privilege and pleasure are 2 of the graces that architecture can bestow on us, that today come from the craft of good design, rooted in 20th century ideas about how homes can be livable and enjoyable.
I'm struck by how, in the first 15 years of this new century, we have rushed to redefine the last one, pay homage to it. Already we're correcting our prejudices against things like brutalism and naked concrete. We're learning to love again the best that architecture could throw at us in the 60s and 70s. And we are occasionally proud to relive those great 20th century moments by reinventing and occasionally borrowing from them when designing new houses. Westmoreland has got concrete, and it's not afraid to use it.
And this is Westmoreland, hunkered down in the leafy suburbs of Liverpool, a 21st century homage to the 1960s. Architect Zach Munro has come to meet the owner, Richard.
Richard.
Hi.
Hi.
Zach, nice to meet you. Hi.
You too. Wow. It's a great space. I mean, it's great to come in and have a proper entrance. A view through, a view up, double height.
And yes, there's concrete everywhere, from floor to ceiling. Although the front seems a little forbidding, the back of the house is friendlier and broken up by large windows. Downstairs, there's a large double-height hallway, an open-plan kitchen, dining and living area, and a cosy snug. Upstairs, there are 5 bedrooms, either side of a long, glass-roofed corridor. The judges enjoyed the glamorous, well-crafted exterior in contrast to the concrete brutalism of the interiors. The previous house on the site was demolished by Richard. The new house can now enjoy the one major asset left behind, its wonderfully mature garden.
This is the view from which, for me, it works.
If you're living in it, it's what you really can appreciate and enjoy about it, is this big expanse of glass and this reflection of the garden and connection with the garden.
Inside, this house is a temple dedicated to concrete.
Neil, the architect, he was kind of quite insistent on doing the concrete, and I kind of bought into it quite early on, because I quite like concrete.
Personally, I love concrete. I think once it's up, the benefits of it are quite massive, in terms of you have no plastering, no painting, no skirting boards. It keeps it very cool in the summer, and it keeps a constant heat in the winter as well.
Once Richard had agreed that concrete should be the main construction material, £120,000 worth of the stuff could start being poured, but with one major caveat. It had to be done right first time.
Because the thing with concrete, it's a one-shot deal, because once that shutter's up and the concrete's in, that's it. You know, there's no fixing it, going back. And I quite like that. You know, as opposed to kind of plaster and the constant kind of working it and rubbing it down and this kind of ridiculous search for perfection.
The house is unashamedly modern, and yet Richard was very clear about one thing. He didn't want a sterile antiseptic box.
I wanted to achieve a kind of nice combination of materials and finishes and looks.
While the architect was inspired by brutalist concrete, Richard wanted something rather more California glamour home.
The biggest influence in the design of this whole space was the Kaufman house in Palm Springs.
The Kaufman home is now widely regarded as one of the most important examples of the modernist or international style. It was designed by Richard Neutra for glamorous indoor-outdoor living and finished in 1946. In 2015, hidden away in Liverpool, there's a modest and fresh interpretation of its genius.
I love that open plan fire, that double-sided fire, and that simple plane, and that's what we wanted to achieve here, and I think we've done it.
But this is not an enormous house. Its sense of scale comes from the connection to the outdoors.
When you've got blue skies, it's lovely being sat in here and reading or listening to music.
Getting all that glazing in place was, however, not easy.
We waited a number of weeks for the glass. It was meant to be about 8 to 10 weeks for delivery. 16 weeks later, we were still waiting. And then, you know, there were various excuses given. And then on the day it was due to deliver, we had a phone call, the lorries crashed. So then we had to wait another 3 weeks to get new replacement glazing. The fact that the glazing was late, there was this huge knock-on effect, really.
And the perfectly detailed glass doesn't stop at the walls.
So up here, we've got 5 bedrooms, 2 of which are en suite and a family bathroom, and this central atrium glass roof.
Yeah, what a glass roof.
Good, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about 6 metres long.
It's a reminder that craftsmanship in building can lie in the simplest of well-executed things, even when design decisions are not fully resolved.
The bookcase I wouldn't have put on the concrete wall. I would have put it on the plaster wall. And Richard, I'm sure he'll agree, he'll tell you. We didn't come to blows, but I never quite understood that decision. But as an architect, you always need to remember, look, it's not your house. If you want to keep absolute control, build your own house. It's as simple as that, isn't it?
Liverpool may be 6,000 miles away from the glitzy case study homes that inspired Westmoreland, But this place carries with it an echo of the international glamour of the best mid-century houses, brought to life by some very up-to-date ideas.
I do like the doors. Those big, full height, 3-metre high doors. Maybe I have size issues.
The next house redefines large. It is a journey into space.
It's like a TARDIS. You'd have no idea about this from the outside.
I'm exploring some of the most ambitiously designed homes in the UK, all of which are in the running to be crowned the RIBA House of the Year. And at the end of the series, we'll be finding out who the winner is. In this programme, it's homes that are simple, modern, and elegantly crafted.
This next house is part of a new emerging breed, a new emerging species of architecture that takes its design cues, its materials, its details, its inspiration from the immediate setting and context, but nearly always softly reworked into a new visual language. This is gentle, respectful. This is caring architecture.
Levering House sits like a caring castle down a mews in a conservation area in Bloomsbury. It's home to Troels, who's Danish with a family background in property, and Peter, who's an American and works as a consultant for luxury hotels. Michelle Gunderhin came to take a look at the house.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, you must be Michelle. I'm Peter.
I am.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you
I'm
for
Troels.
inviting me into your home.
Welcome.
I'm loving what's going on the outside here with this beautiful brick and amazing bronze, but I've got this funny feeling you have some surprises for me inside.
Well, please come in.
Yes, please. Thank you. It's more enclosed than I imagined it would be.
Well, that's deliberate. We wanted a contrast when you came into more intimate space, and you'll see when we go up that it's much lighter and a larger double-height space.
Okay, lead the way.
Please.
This enormous house is laid out over 4 floors. At the top, there's a large living space and south-facing roof terrace. Below that is the main living area, with an open-plan kitchen diner, more terraces, a study and the master bedroom. At street level is the hallway, second study, guest bedrooms and a garage. And then there's the basement, containing a pool running 14.5 metres along the longest side of the plot. The central core of the building is a voluminous light well, dropping all the way down to the basement and delivering natural light to each floor.
Wow. I mean, this is extraordinary. Your house literally opens up before my eyes. Was that a very key part of your brief to the architect? Because it's certainly a very dramatic piece in the centre of your house.
Correct. The other thing that was important in the brief was to have a lot of indoor-outdoor space and communication. So we've got several terraces, what we call the dining room terrace and the kitchen terrace. And then, of course, the main terrace up there.
The RIBA judges were captivated by the spread of daylight in this place, in a design which extracts a generous house with loads of outdoor space out of a tight corner site.
It's like a TARDIS. You'd have no idea about this from the outside. You've got inside space, you've got outdoor space, I've got daylight being pulled into the house, and you tell me there's a swimming pool. I mean, there's no indication of this from the outside at all.
Well, I mean, I would take it as a compliment that you don't really experience the house until you get in, because we also didn't want the house necessarily to dominate the mews, for example. So it's nice to have a bit of surprise when you come in.
And the craftsmanship of the construction was immediately obvious to the judges in this well-made building.
We went for real materials, so real oak floors, steel, concrete, and then on the outside, bronze, sort of to have authentic materials. And that might be my sort of Scandinavian background, this about honesty in materials, which I think is a Scandinavian tradition. It's modern, but it's also crafted.
The dedication to authentic, honest materials extends even to the bricks. The surrounding streets contain mainly Georgian terraces. The architect, Jamie Faubert, wanted to match the traditional yellow London stock brick. Troels, in response, turned instinctively to his native Denmark. The Peterson family have been in the artisan brickmaking business since 1791. Christian is the man in charge.
I am generation number 7. My whole life has been brick making.
The Peterson factory is famous throughout Europe for the quality and craftsmanship of its bricks.
We are making the bricks like old handmade bricks. We have made a special machine who work like the hand makers. They press it down like original handmade. They cut the too much clay away, and then he takes the form up.
The bricks are lifted from the frame, leaving a thumbprint. It's these marks of the maker that impressed themselves on Troels.
A quaint detail here, the brickmaker's thumb marks. A sweet detail. A sign of the production.
Of the craftsmanship.
Of the craftsmanship,
yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Craftsmanship celebrates the handmade, the repetitive, and the pleasure of doing something well for its own sake. Something evident in the joinery and furniture here.
I sit here, we've got this lovely desk made, which I think is actually very nice, and it has a very nice feature, which is actually a law requirement in Denmark that for office work, that your desk has to be can move up and down, and then you can stand up and work. And then we've got the shutters made here, which is very nice. We lived in a Georgian house before, and Georgian shutters have these small openings so you can modulate the light. Yeah. And of course, in a modern shutter, that would be slightly difficult. So with the architect, we talked about it, and he came up with this idea, a bit like a Christmas calendar,
to allow you to adjust the amount of light.
So you can adjust. So if the sun comes in, you can sort of block it if it hits the desk.
It also makes a kind of sculptural artwork out of the view, doesn't it?
Yeah, also, yeah.
Do you often keep this shut to give yourself a bit more privacy?
Depending how I'm dressed.
Oh, really?
The architect, Jamie Faubert, also introduced a slice of glamour to the house, the basement's 14.5-metre swimming pool.
OK, now I officially have house envy.
The indoor pool contributes to the thermal mass of the building and ingeniously is heated with energy from the Earth's core.
So underneath, not under the pool, but underneath all here, there are 5 boreholes spread out 8 meters apart.
So the boreholes go down 180 meters. So 180 meters.
That's almost twice the height of Big Ben. I mean, how does that happen?
Well, it was certainly a challenge. It's not new technology, but it was constrained by the size of the site.
But how does that work? Literally by building a hole, you get heat? I don't understand.
The liquid runs in a loop, and the water goes down at 7 degrees and comes up at 9. And then you pick out those 2 degrees, and then it goes down again, and you pick out 2 more degrees.
So it's just the action of the water going that far, that deep?
Yes,
that's what
that picks the heat from the soil.
This heat, along with energy from solar panels, is processed in the service area that Troels and Peter affectionately call the monster room, dedicated to powering this fortress of a house.
How does it feel? Is it what you imagined?
It's amazing to live with all the daylight. Someone would have lunch here or sitting up there. It's like it's summer all the time. There's the changing sky, the sun come out, and I think that's the biggest quality.
And hopefully it contributes to the cityscape or the realm here. I think it is important that it does fit into this Bloomsbury context.
There is still one more house to see before we find out which 2 of this week's have been shortlisted for the RIBA House of the Year award. But to give us some idea of what it takes to triumph, we visited the 2005 winner, Stealth House, the London home of designer Jeff Powell and his partner, the comedian Jenny Eclair.
I always describe the place as a black wooden box or a shed, a black wooden shed.
It's a black wooden shed, it's a beach house.
That's
what it's meant to be. It's meant to be sort of almost styleless in that sense.
The site originally had a modest 2-bed house on it, replaced by this innovative 5-bedroom wooden box designed by Jeff in collaboration with the architect Robert Dye. This is a lightweight and adaptable building.
All the walls come down, they're all stud, so you can move a wall, refit it somewhere else. The structure exists from the outside, so anything that's inside isn't supporting. It can move about all over the place.
Do you know what? This is a really practical place to live, and I've never come home without feeling really pleased.
Stealth House won the award because it shows just what you can get out of a standard suburban plot using simple, affordable materials, combined with no small amount of design genius.
I was very surprised to win, and I thought we were just there for a nice evening out.
I was really
pleased. Absolutely gobsmacked. It was great.
But which of the 4 houses in this programme will make it onto the shortlist? We've already seen 4 beautifully crafted and imaginative examples of the modern, simple home. And we have one more equally delightful house yet to see before we find out which of them go forward. We've looked at 4 great projects in this programme, all in the running for the RIBA House of the Year award. And I've still got one last home to see before we find out which of them have been shortlisted.
I have to say this, I receive a fair few letters about the absence of curtains in modern buildings. So what's that about? I mean, is every lover of modern architecture some kind of exhibitionist? I mean, is it that they want everybody to witness every intimate moment?
Kevin Castell suggests they might. This gleaming modernist marble on a cliff in North Wales exhibits its contents for the world to see across Cardigan Bay. And I'm not sure I'd use the word modest to describe it. The RIBA judges liked this elegant house for its formal arrangement of solids and voids, exterior and interior spaces, shelter and views. This is a house that lifts you up to engage with the art here and the dramatic setting. On the ground floor, there's a generous open-plan kitchen living space, 2 spare bedrooms at the back, and upstairs a private deck and the master bedroom. Simple. The owners are Rob, an events producer, and his wife Kay, who works for an engineering research company. They wanted a building that floated, which would suck in those panoramic views here and embrace their love of art and sculpture. The project finished in 2014, and we followed it on Grand Designs.
I think it's a beautiful, beautiful object, and there's so much to like about it. You get the contrast of the greys and the whites and the shadows. Yeah. Everywhere you look, there's something which has beauty, and you know,
it's
that's
very, very
fantastic.
good. Modernist, clean line, contemporary architecture is not the easiest thing to achieve, as people may think it is. There's a high level of detail required to ensure that all interfaces meet exactly. There's a perfect alignment of wall lines, glazing lines, etc. It's all borne out by an extreme amount of detail work on our part and liaison with an exceptionally good contractor, because they were artisan builders. They understood the finite tolerance on this design, which was literally 0. We didn't have any tolerance on the house.
There were other challenges for the builders too. The only access to the site was via a narrow railway bridge.
It's an isolated site, so getting access for materials and labour to the site was always going to be the biggest challenge. Even the possibility of delivering by boat to the beach with a crane on the beach. But as it turns out, we managed to source smaller vehicles and different methodologies of getting material through the railway bridge at the end of the track.
Some spaces here are outside, some inside, some are both. Rob was inspired to paint a homage to the Dutch artist Piet Mondrian, inspired by the abstract plan of his own house. Even the kitchen cabinets are detailed like a Mondrian painting. Inspiration for the house came after a visit to Richard Meyer's Getty Center above Los Angeles.
The thing about the work of Richard Meyer that we've seen was how you can get incredible beauty from just geometric simplicity.
The house may have been inspired in California, but Rob and Kay were keen to ensure it felt like part of a new Welsh movement in architecture. It's unusual for a building to create its own context, but that wall actually does as much as anything else here in terms of providing the foil for the building.
My concern was building something that didn't look completely out of place. The wall does that job.
A key part of the brief is to retain a sense of Welshness in the build. We studied the architecture of Wales.
And that manifested itself in the stone wall, which is all the stone reused from the existing cottage, and it was all built in a traditional technique, which is synonymous with the area.
Stevenson Studio have built a house for feasting on landscape and seascape. You just have to pause for a minute and just drink that in. It's like a giant painting. That is your main attraction, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you've got a view from your bathroom as well, haven't you? Oh, good heavens. Lying in the bath, looking straight out. And from the shower as well, in here?
Yeah.
Now, the shower has a great view over the coastal path. That'll double the number of dog walkers, won't it?
I don't think so.
I guarantee you're going to become the seller. There'll be such gossip about this place. So why no curtains at all? Why no blinds at all?
I think they're old-fashioned, and I don't want to spoil the cleanness of the lines with curtains. And also, they just stop you from getting the vistas and the light.
I hope you've been inspired by all 5 of these exemplary homes. But which will make the judges' shortlist for the RIBA House of the Year award? Mackara, ghostly, ambiguous and perfectly crafted. Fitzroy House, a slice of Hollywood glamour in Hampstead. Westmoreland, mid-century modern tempered with some new brutalist concrete. Levering House, an urban castle of light brick and Danish craftsmanship. Or Cefn Castell, a clifftop Welsh modernist piece of perfection. We're giving you the chance to have your say on House of the Year in our public vote. Head to channel4.com/House of the Year. It's now time to find out which of these projects has made it onto the coveted shortlist of the 2015 House of the Year. I'm meeting architect Jonathan Manser, a member of the jury. He's here to tell me which ones are in the running to take home the big prize. So tell me about the first project on this shortlist.
Well, this one is a house in Mackara in Northern Ireland. It's on the edge of a village. You arrive in this sort of courtyard area, and it's very, very simple. Very few materials. Fantastic local granite that's been used inside and out, both for flooring and for benches and so on. And as you come into the house, all these spaces open up, and you suddenly realise you're in actually a rather sophisticated house with great internal spaces and these views out.
It does give us a great sense of achievement that we've done this and we've built the house.
And the quality of the build work is fantastic. Its attention to detail could only have been done with the quality of the workmanship that David and his team brought onto the house.
We're absolutely delighted.
Now, Jonathan, I'd like to ask you what the next project is that you've shortlisted, but I know, because you can't miss the house, and you certainly can't miss the model.
Levering House. The reason it's on the shortlist is that the way that right bang in the centre of London, on an area where this street morphs into a mews, it's modern without being aggressive and assertive, it's confident, and it's a bit like going into the TARDIS. It's enormous. Beautiful interplay of spaces and lights inside. Right the way through the building, attention to detail, all fitting together beautifully.
Sometimes when you walk down a street and look at an old house and you think of the past, who built it 200 years ago, and maybe this sometime in the future somebody else will notice it, and I think that's a nice thing. Maybe this little corner of London got a little nice detail.
Throughout this film, we've talked a bit about craftsmanship and the well-made thing. In truth, there are so many parts of a building that can be crafted, that can be done as beautifully as possible for the simple pleasure of that. From the design work through to the joinery, the brickwork and the plastering. Even a super rational, minimal home can be finely crafted in its details. Craft is never far from fine construction or design. It is woven into our best buildings, and it speaks directly to us, to our hearts.
As Johannes Brahms, the composer, said, without craft, inspiration is a mere reed shaken in the wind. In the next programme, we'll look at another group of houses up for the award. Some smaller projects that have also received recognition. And we'll find out who the winner is of House of the Year 2015. Every year, the Royal Institute of British Architects holds a competition to find the UK's best new house. From hundreds of entries, they whittle it down to a long list, then a shortlist, and finally a winner for this great architectural prize. And this year, for the first time, Grand Designs is along for the ride. So, we'll be taking you behind usually closed doors to see some of the finest new architecture in the country. Wow, that's like a cliff of brick. If that isn't a facade, I don't know what is. So far, we've seen extraordinary country villas.
This is the entry into the double height space.
And houses that rework tiny urban plots.
I'm very struck by this view, though. It's a hidden beauty, isn't it? This series is entirely dedicated to great houses of today, homes from which you can take inspiration, which are the exemplars of where design is heading.
There are just 3 more contenders left to visit.
I really was shocked at how modern it was.
What it delivers is this glorious mixing of the atmosphere out there and in here.
Before finally, we exclusively discover who the winner of this coveted prize is.
Looking at great architecture is something of a dream job, really. A wonderful set of experiences that, frankly, we would like to share with you.
We're almost at the end of our romp through the long list of homes in the running for the Royal Institute of British Architecture's House of the Year Award. And 6 projects have already made it onto the shortlist. The monumental Flint House, Sussex House, Kew, built from weathered steel, the Vaulted House, Levering, built from handmade Scandinavian bricks, and Mackera in Northern Ireland. Now there's one final category of homes to look at before we discover who the winner is of the RIBA House of the Year Award 2015.
This next group of houses share a sort of powerful energy that comes from the confident celebration of one thing, geometry. Now that can take the form of a cluster of different shapes put together, or one shape extruded out of another across the landscape, or a sort of slot and slide arrangement where one form grows out of an existing structure.
All the homes we're about to see enjoy a thrusting confidence thanks to their shape. The first is in one of the most wild and windswept places in the country.
This is Dungeness, which is a triangular wedge of land that juts out into the English Channel. It's composed entirely of shingle. And that makes it, interestingly, Britain's only official desert. It's also home to a rather struggling fishing industry here. It's dominated by that nuclear power station over there, and you would think that would deter anybody from wanting to come and spend time here or live here. But in fact, the opposite is true. It's become a sort of design magnet, this place, an experimental architectural hotbed.
Strict planning laws here dictate that new buildings can only replace old ones, and they must observe the footprint and height of the original structure. This has led to a landscape littered with geometric black boxes, sheds, and beach hut bungalows. You can think of this entire peninsula as a sort of architectural petri dish in which there are new strains growing all the time. And the latest culture is this place, which is called Pobble House. You can stay in it, so I'm going to stay in it. Pobble is a 100 square metre open plan house, built from 3 shed-like structures, covered in cement board, strips of larch and weathering steel. The RIBA judges were struck by how the arrangement of sheds, like nesting tables, is pulled out over the beach. At the rear of the building, there's a children's dormitory. Connected to it is a second volume containing the master bedroom and a guest room. And finally, the kitchen and living room. It's not a difficult building to understand that this is the living space and kitchen separated by 1 step. This blue bit is the metal box stuck on the side, and down one side of the building runs the corridor with the front door on that side. Sorry, I haven't made the bed. But you can see in here how small this room is. It's just enough to get either side of the bed. Master bedroom. You walk out of that section of the building through this glazed link, this floating glazed link, into this separate building, which is the children's bedroom stroke family room. 6 bunks with little windows. And what is fantastic is actually the way that the architect has done simple things like put that long window there, give you that long view out, that connection through and out of the building either end is fantastic. Pobble replaced a traditional timber bungalow of a similar shape on exactly the same spot on the site. It was built as a series of timber-framed boxes. The shingle beach couldn't support a crane, so all the construction materials had to be carried to the site by hand. The insulated timber structure has a waterproof membrane to guard against wind and rain. And then a covering of cement board, steel and wraparound strips of larch cladding. The house took just 9 months to build and was designed by a local architect, Guy Holloway, to a relatively modest budget of £250,000.
What I wanted to do was create a house like what you would find on the beach. So you find rusting metal.
Yeah, a lot of that, yeah.
Boats that have gone, the timber's gone all silver. There are a lot of complications in terms of making sure that this building is going to be weather-tight. The weather here is quite furious. And underneath the timber, then, there is a waterproof skin, as it were. It's like a wetsuit. Literally, it's a rubber suit. There are no gutters here at all. Yeah. Because it's just beach. So the rain will just go through the timber and then just trickle inside the facade and then drip off onto the beach.
Guy's colleague, Mike Pearson, has been using the same technique of larch cladding laid over a black wetsuit on another project further along the Kent coast.
The larch that we're using here in Margate and the larch that we use down at Dungeness is Siberian larch. We picked Siberian larch because the temperatures are much, much colder, so the wood grows a lot slower, and ultimately the product is really quite stable. We weren't trying to marry Pobble up with other buildings, we were trying to marry it up with the surrounding environment.
Larch is rich in resin, so it doesn't need a varnish. Instead, it silvers with age to a variegated grey. These contemporary beach huts are becoming increasingly popular. I suppose what it is, it's the combination here of being able to live in this new piece of architecture and still have contact with this amazing landscape out here. And this landscape is like an American prairie, offering intense respite just an hour from London. This is a nice detail. At this end of the building, to have corners which are glazed, so your view isn't directed just down the length of the building, but also out at 45 degrees. And look, it disappears right into the pocket of the wall. This one too. There's even a little pocket for the handles. Now that detail's not cheap to do. Getting a cantilever to work like this, not easy to do. What it delivers is this glorious mixing of the atmosphere out there and in here. You expect a wild bird to fly in, circle around and fly out. It's great. This is actually the best seat in the house. I have seen many views improved by architects, but that takes the biscuit. It's a window that makes it look as though you own your own personal nuclear power station in your own garden. It's fantastic.
The RIBA judges enjoyed those carefully framed views. Pobble, they said, is small but perfectly formed. And I think it appealed to them precisely because it references the humble shed.
For architects, sheds are really interesting because they are almost habitable, and they've got perhaps a window, a roof, a door in them. They're not insulated, but it doesn't take much to convert them into somewhere to live. And in so doing, I think many of us find the idea of the shed attractive because it's a very simple idea. It suggests authenticity and a more straightforward way of living.
But what do the people who already live and work here think of this new sheddy chic architecture?
What's your view of the change that's now happening and these new buildings which are appearing? Did you see that as just an evolution of what's always gone on here? Or is
it's an evolution to a degree. If you look at all these houses down here years and years ago, they all worked in the local industry, which would have been fishing. A lot of them were lifeboatmen, so they're all part of the community. They all work together. If you've just got holiday makers come down, what community is there?
Yeah. Do you think you can cope with another 15 or 20 of these contemporary buildings?
15 or 20, yes.
Yeah.
You've got to be reasonable about it, haven't you?
Yeah. What's your view about that building?
At first, I thought it screamed, but now it's weathered. I think it is far more in keeping with the colours over there.
Yeah.
People were attracted to Dungeness for a certain reason, and part of it is because there's ramshackle buildings.
Yeah.
So I think if it's done sensitively and
just occasionally.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a balance.
This place is special. It's a kind of environment that takes a different approach to building. And these homes, for that matter, are temporary. And that, too, suggests a rather modest approach to how they're done outside and in. And then you add to that the fact that this site, historically, has been used by fishermen, by a small local community, now by EDF with their nuclear power station here. And of course, the architecture then is able to take all of that as its rich context. So these buildings, if you like, are more responsive, more contextual, and far more exciting because of it.
Now we've got 2 more houses to see before we find out the complete shortlist of this year's competition. And then we'll be revealing to you exclusively the winner of the 2015 RIBA House of the Year Award. Imagine you're building a new house and you take your dream to an architect. Now it is his or her job to take that loose bag of ingredients that you give them, that half-written recipe, whip light and air into it and spoon it into different enticing shapes and then gently bake it into an exquisite lighter-than-air syllabub. That's what you pay them for. Not that you'll ever notice, because an architect will deliver so much more value for your money in your design of storage, clever circulation, beauty, imagination.
Northern Ireland is full of such architectural activity. There are 4 newly commissioned houses there on this year's RIBA House of the Year shortlist. And this is the last of them in Belfast. It too uses some powerful geometrical shapes to get its story over.
Wow, that's like a cliff of brick.
If that isn't a facade, I don't know what is. That is a good rectangle. And there are some interesting bits of geometry at the side as well. I happen to know that this building, good as it is, gets even better at the back as you go down the hill.
The three different boxes that make up this unusual building are easier to understand from the rear of the house. The block on the right has the kitchen at the lowest level, above which is a sitting room with 2 of the 4 children's bedrooms above that. The central block has the dining area at ground floor, the raised entrance hallway above that, and a landing at the top, while the left block contains a raised sitting room in the black box above a cellar and the master bedroom above. This layout, which also steps down the hill, produces a series of enjoyable old-fashioned rooms on lots of levels, organised around an important central hall. And every room is given a view. It's home to Fiona, who works in trade exports, Bernard, who runs 2 pubs, and their family.
Hi, Kevin.
Nice to meet you, Kevin.
Yeah.
How are
And you?
You're very welcome.
Fiona, that's right. And Bernard, yeah.
Bernard.
How are you?
Yeah, really well, thank you. I'm admiring the brick. It looks like a rubbed, handmade brick. Where's it from?
It's a brick that was used to build the Mac.
The Metropolitan Arts Centre, the MAC, is an award-winning building in Belfast city centre. Fiona and Bernard use the same brick and the same architects, Hall McKnight.
How do you get on with them?
We had a really enjoyable time designing the house. I think we had a fairly strong brief for the architects, and whenever they came up with their first little sketch of the house, I really was shocked at how modern it was.
Yeah, it's very sharp. It's very, very clean. There's a very simple, strong approach to this building.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're a golfer, I know that. And you so happen, how miraculous, to end up living backing onto a golf course. How planned was that?
Well, that's what it was all about. That's what it was all about.
I'm in paradise.
Clearly.
Their site had a perfectly all right but relatively low-grade 1960s house on it, which they decided to demolish. Their 21st century suburban house took 13 months to build, employing 4 bricklayers working for 12 weeks to lay 38,000 bricks. The RIBA judges especially liked the chiselled volumes and chunky, tense massing of this building, and the light, airy interiors.
Oh, so you can see right through the building here, can't you? From the road right through to the golf course.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you come into the building, where do you head day to day?
Downstairs
to the kitchen.
Okay, go there. Oh, into the light. What a good large room with a great black space station in it.
Well, can you make out what the island is? It's the floor plan of the house. I suppose the architects were very keen to have something in the island that spoke of the geometry of the house, but that was timeless as well.
But why do this in the first place? I mean, why build and why go on this journey to make yourself a house?
It's a beautiful setting. It's just magnificent. And we didn't hesitate about knocking the old house down and rebuilding, because we had a fantastic relationship right from the word go with the architects. We trusted them enough for them to try and push us as far as they could.
I think we knew what we wanted in terms of the rooms and how we wanted it divided up, but we had no idea how we wanted that to come together. And we would never in 100 years come up with this design that they've come up with.
The lead architect for this project was Ian McKnight.
Now, there's a sketch they've got, and it shows these 3 forms. How quickly did the idea truly evolve?
The initial idea, the kind of conceptual idea, was really very quick. And I think when you've got such a beautiful material, and it's a brick that we've used many times, when you're working with a material like that, there's a sort of softness and a beauty to it. And what we wanted to do was to make a house that expressed that very strong, elemental quality.
The solid, simple volumes of the outside belie the sequence of contained spaces inside, which are separated by short staircases.
So now it's 8 steps up from the hall to
the master bedroom.
Your bedroom's here.
Yep.
Okay, and then another 7. What's up there then? That's
the level at the children's bedroom.
So all 4 of them have bedrooms up there?
All 4 of them, yeah.
Meanwhile,
you come up on your floor, you've only got your bedroom.
So we'll go through here. To the
This is
master
a
bedroom.
really tall ceilinged room, this one.
Yeah.
Because this is following the pitch of the roof up and out. And that's a very tall window.
You get to see so much of the sky, and we get to appreciate so many beautiful sunsets.
Just enough room for one person to squeeze out here. Come out here in the morning,
Yep. Watch the early golfers. Have a cup of tea.
watch the sunsets.
Absolutely.
So this building is successful for lots of reasons. One is to do with how it slips down the slope rather beautifully, another is in the way that the building is broken up into these geometric forms. But I think chiefly it works because of that, the greenery, which is soft and lush and it is natural, whereas this is hard and man-made and highly geometrical and it is pink. And it is in the relationship between the two, the way that this building drinks that landscape to make living here such a pleasure. That's where the building really wins. It wouldn't have happened if Fiona and Bernard hadn't placed all their trust in the hands of their architect to deliver something so radical. It is in the very kind of sharp, odd juxtaposition of this and that the success of this place really lies, I think.
The house at Church Road rewrites suburban architecture with some no-nonsense, twiddle-free shapes. As does the winner of the same RIBA award 2 years ago, Slip House in South London. This place was conceived as a series of boxes that slide over each other, and it was a project that we followed on Grand Designs. The architect and owner, Carl Turner, designed the house with a lot of input from his wife, Mary.
Welcome. I like to think of it as the mothership.
Yeah, giving it a female identity.
Well, it's weird though, because when you come up the road, it is like she's landed.
You're telling me?
Yeah.
The judges didn't just enjoy the materials and geometry of this building, but also its versatility.
Oh, they both move.
Yeah.
That's rather neat.
And this pod is a box within a box on wheels.
You can sort of rotate it around the room.
Yeah.
It's a moving room. It's driven. It becomes a bedroom, in fact.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we said. If we have this as a kind of like studio flat, we could put a bed in there.
What makes this house exceptional is, of course, Carl's imagination. He inventively chose ready-made products and materials like the precast concrete floor slabs, sandblasted glass panels for the building's skin, and furniture made from birch veneer plywood. The judges also liked Carl's super low energy approach. This is an urban building that generates power.
It's been joyous but stressful at times.
But anything that's worthwhile, though, it comes with effort, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't win gold medals for just sort of strolling along the road.
The two houses we've seen so far couldn't be more different. One an extruded beach hut, the other a stack of rust-coloured bricks.
So, we only have one more house to see before we find out what the shortlist is for the 2015 House of the Year.
But before we discover who's made it through, we're going to tease you a little longer with a hand-picked selection of innovative, smaller projects.
The boys cried when we first walked around the house.
I'm very fond of this old briefcase. It's been a travelling companion for years, and it now bears the marks of use, the patina of the passing of time, and here and there one or two repairs as well, just like an old building. I'm pleased to see on this year's long list one or two projects which do respect the ancient, to take an old ruin and to insert a new 21st century idea into it, reinvigorates it, gives it new meaning. I call this style of architecture slot and slide.
In the wilder parts of our landscape, you can easily find buildings that are no longer fit for habitation. The starting point for a slot and slide project. And that's precisely how the story of this final house began. Architect Zach Monroe went to find out more.
So this is the mill, and it's part of an abandoned Scottish farmstead. It's an agricultural building. So why something this ancient being considered for an award for modern architecture?
For more than 200 years, the mill has stood on this hillside in the Scottish borders. Now this Georgian farm building has been repaired and fitted out as a modern holiday retreat. There are 4 bedrooms laid out over 2 floors at the top of the hill. This arrangement frees up the more spacious lower part of the building for the kitchen, reception room and main living room, which are on 3 levels at the bottom of the hill. The RIBA judges admired how the new distinctive living spaces have been slotted into what was a long, narrow and apparently uninhabitable structure. The architect is Will Turnell.
So Will, tell me a bit about the brief from the client.
Well, here to really create a bolt hole, but it's very important that this bolt hole is both cosy and lovely to be in, but also really engages with the incredible setting that we've got here, but also have a really fantastic sense of shelter within the house, so that if it's thumping horrible weather from outside and the wind is buffeting the whole building, you still feel secure. Oh, it happens quite a lot, yeah, absolutely. But then having your cake and eating it, because you've got a sense of shelter, but you can still look out at that view.
The challenge for Will was to respect the character of the mill and gently repair the ancient structure while converting it for use as a 21st century building. His budget was limited, so his strategy was to slide a new timber box inside the existing stone walls.
How do you sort of rearrange a home inside a mill?
Well, it's a challenge because it's very long and it's very narrow, and there's a danger of it being like a railway carriage. So coming into the middle of the building, as we've done here, that gives you an opportunity to have a hub that can connect into other spaces around. You can see from one to the other, so you can be aware of what the kids are doing in another room or what somebody's doing in the kitchen, what they're cooking, but not feel separated.
The masterstroke was to lift the entire structure out of the mill and insert a line of clear-story windows between the wall and the roof. It brings plenty of daylight into the building.
As solid as the outside is, and as heavy as it is, the inside actually is very light.
What we wanted to do is have a sense of both lightness in terms of the daylight that's coming in, but also a sense of what it's made of, that it's made of something different from the outer skin.
The joy and delicacy of the interior is, however, upstaged by the landscape.
So what's up here, Will?
Well, this takes us up to the living room, which, as you can see, is the place that you have the main framed view.
What a
for
view!
The house. Absolutely. This is the point where you get up high, you can really enjoy the view out, up and down the valley as well as across the valley through that big window at the end.
This is a light touch project with few new openings in the old mill and a roof which appears so light it floats above the walls.
We like this long, low roof. The timber had gone to mush, but we could use the slates if they were taken off carefully and put back up afterwards.
So those are the original slates from the original roof?
Yep, recycled, dressed, tidied up, a few extra ones added, and then put back on.
Architect Susie Turley was one of the team who remade the mill's slate roof.
The original slates on the mill building have a really distinctive purple colour, which is really similar to the heather on the hills around. There wasn't quite enough of the original slates to cover the whole roof, so we needed to get some from a local source, and they were reclaimed slates.
The slates on many Scottish houses are traditionally small and heavy, so that they can resist strong winds, but it means you need a lot of them. It took 3 slaters 4 weeks to fit more than 5,000 slates onto the roof of the mill. It's a job that needs a good eye as much as experience and skill. The result is a roof which is as subtly textured and coloured as the old walls. I think the magical success of this place, and it has a great sense of place, lies in the juxtaposition of the breathtaking elegance of the inside with the grain and the roughness of the exterior. Well, sadly, we're almost at the end of our journey through some of the finest new architecture the UK has to offer. So the question now is, of the three we've seen, which one goes forward to the shortlist for House of the Year 2015? Is it Pobble, the extruded shed-shaped beach hut that's a viewing box for the wilderness? Church Road, a powerfully shaped new piece of red brick suburbia? Or the Mill, a lovingly repaired crusty old box from which rises a perfect woody world? Which one have the RIBA judges picked? Architect Chris Loyne was on the panel and has the verdict.
So which of these projects have you put on the shortlist?
The Mill, Scotland.
Now why?
It was a beautiful example of finding a new use for an existing building, and that's very important these days, I think. What they've done here that's so clever is they've raised the roof and they've lifted it off to get light in through a new clear story at the top. And they've tackled the difficulty of replanning an interior.
Within, first of all, a building which wasn't designed to be lived in. Secondly, one which is long and thin and with few openings.
That's it. When you walk into a house or a home, you have a feeling of warmth and comfort in some, in others you don't. This achieves that, and it's a very comfortable house.
A delicate approach to conservation has led to a beautifully resolved building.
Fantastic. It's great to be shortlisted. That's really nice. That's good, really good news. I think it's great to have a project like this that recycles old buildings, acknowledged as being a viable way to create new houses.
You too can vote for any of the houses in this series to win our public vote by logging on to channel4.com/House of the Year.
We now know all of the 7 houses which have made it onto the shortlist for the RIBA's House of the Year. But first, before we announce the winner, there's a final category of projects that we at Grand Designs have picked out from amongst the hundreds of buildings that were under consideration in this year's competition. Each of the houses you're about to see has already won an RIBA regional award, and so we wanted to take the opportunity to celebrate these small projects.
Knighton House is a Victorian villa in the suburbs of Leicester, which has been completely refurbished by Feldman Architects with 2 new extensions. Niels, the architect, lives here with his wife, Lisa, and their 2 children.
When we first purchased the Victorian house, it was in a shocking state of disrepair.
It was so bad, in fact, the boys cried when we first walked around the house.
But new approaches, materials and ideas can revitalise an old building. Niels designed 2 timber-framed extensions to the home that are low, long and powerful.
The side extension and the second extension, which is now the office, really open out towards the sunshine, and with that we've changed the orientation of the house towards the garden.
There were some surprises along the way though.
When the house was turned into bedsits in the 1920s, the stairs were boxed in, and when we bought the house we didn't know whether the staircase still existed. But on the first day we gave the boys a hammer each and they discovered the staircase.
Finding the staircase helped re-establish the old character of the place. The new extensions add 21st century functionality.
We realised that the existing house had great rooms, but it didn't quite work for us as a young family with both of us working from home. So the 2 extensions give us the space that we couldn't find in the Victorian villa.
Well, we love entertaining as well, so to have a huge space facing the garden, to be cooking and entertaining, it's really changed our lives.
For our last small project, Zach Munro travelled to Howe Farm in Buckinghamshire. Designed by IPT Architects, it's a new single-storey house on a working farm. The building just disappears against the agricultural setting. It's modest, low, and timber-clad in larch. The RIBA judges were so impressed by the restraint and the elegance of the open-plan interior, they gave it their Small Project of the Year award for the south of England. It's a working farm for the owners, Martin and his American partner, Amber, who's expecting twins.
I think initially Martin wanted something quite traditional, whereas...
Yeah, a timber frame building, quite traditional.
Whereas I always wanted something that takes me back to California a bit more outdoor living, you know, kind of incorporating that. And really just being able to enjoy the views while we were inside and the beauty of where we are.
Amber and Martin were in temporary accommodation when they bought the farm, so they wanted their new house quickly. They also had a strictly limited budget. Lee Town of IPT Architects found the solution, a system build.
So what is this system that it's built from?
It's basically a rigid insulation that's sandwiched between a sheathing board each side, and every kind of 2 feet or 600 millimetres you have a structural timber, and then everything just slots together. For this house, the actual structural skeleton we built in 6 days basically. As soon as that's complete, electricians, plumbers, roofers and the cladding teams can immediately work on it.
All at the same time?
All at the same time.
One of the things about this house is that it is ideally suited for children.
I'm really excited about it, actually. The idea of having twins is absolutely terrifying, but when they get older, I can open up these windows and throw them outside and know that I can see them from almost every single room in the house. I think it's going to be great. I can't wait.
We've taken you all over the UK, and we now know all the shortlisted houses for the RIBA House of the Year for 2015. But which one is going to win?
I have to say, it has been a huge privilege and a great deal of fun to have visited so many of the houses that are being considered for the 2015 RIBA House of the Year award. There is a sense of energy and excitement about all of the projects, and it has been wonderful to see how architects all over the UK are delivering such imaginative and exquisite houses for their clients. So, who of all of them is the winner?
The 7 in the running are an exceptional country retreat in Sussex, a glass and timber box under an origami roof. Flint House, a great geological wedge of a building. Q, an engineering triumph in rusty steel with a great sense of playfulness. Vaulted House, a light-filled London home on a landlocked site with views to the sky. Levering House, an urban castle of light-filled spaces and Danish craftsmanship. Mackerath in Northern Ireland, enchantingly airy, gently ambiguous and beautifully made. And finally, in Scotland, an exemplary and elegant retrofit inside a crumbling old mill. Which house will it be? Well, I'm on my way to see it.
You know, this series has been all about celebrating the very best of British architecture, its function, what it can bring, delight, the craftsmanship of building, and what domestic architecture is for in the 21st century. And you know, there is one building which exemplifies all of these things and more. Wow. This place looks like it's made from some precious mineral. 24 carat. No wonder it's the winner. Flint House.
This is a game changer. Flint House isn't just good, it's important. It redefines relationship with landscape. This hunk, 80 tons of flint, was built for Lord Rothschild on his family estate at Wadston in Buckinghamshire, and it is exquisite. At the thin end of the Great Wedge is a dining area with full-height windows on 3 sides. It sits against a separate kitchen, which is half open to a sitting room carved into the building. Above are 3 bedrooms fitted neatly into the rising volume of the triangle. And this main building has a smaller companion next door. It's built out of the very material it sits on, a seam of flint. The flint, together with blocks of chalk, are graded up the walls of the building in layers like strata. This is a ziggurat temple to the raw material. It was designed by architect Charlotte Skene Catling for Lord Rothschild.
Hello. Kevin, Lord
Hello.
Rothschild.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Now, well, thanks for meeting me here. I have come with one express purpose, and that is to say that you have won.
Oh, really?
How's that?
How unbelievable. Give you a kiss.
Congratulations to you both.
Fantastic. Yeah,
Congratulations, because it's a fantastic building.
It is. Well, it's her great credit.
You're still overcome now, aren't you? I have to say, the judges were pretty unanimous.
Oh, fantastic.
So I'd like to know what it was between the two of you that led to the resolution of the design and how you worked through it together.
Well, Charlotte produced some ideas which we thought were absolutely fantastic. That this building is like a rock, two rocks in the landscape.
Jacob has got an incredible understanding of architecture, and for him to sort of see the initial idea and carry it all the way through without compromise, that's very unusual for an architect, I think.
It was quite a difficult idea to embrace, but I got it in the end. And having got it, then I think, you know, I'm good at the detail.
You get around with it. Yeah. So having come up with the idea, the sort of simple, clear narrative, how easy was it then to arrange the internal spaces?
It was quite tricky, actually. We wanted the building to move from the sort of most public at the centre of the site to the most private, which is sort of buried in the trees at either end.
Many congratulations.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, that's really
such a great building.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thanks.
Well done.
Thanks.
No, well done.
Well done.
Charlotte has achieved the sense that this house has been excavated, quarried out of the rock.
Wherever you look, in this room, there's this fantastic engagement with landscape. It's very monumental, but at the same time, very domestic. Open plan, this is not. Oh, Lord. It has its own grotto. This is a take on the 18th century. It's fabulous. It's very inviting, too. It's beautiful. It's fabulous. And it has this amazing reflective soffit here. That is a stroke of genius, that.
Upstairs is quite private.
That's quite some view back down.
Across a gallery above the sitting room is the master bedroom.
Oh. A few traditional furnishings. This building, it's incredibly robust. It could almost accept any decoration, any personality. It's a very finely tuned balance between the solidity of the mass of this building and its potential to adapt. Wherever you look, out of every window, there is a view of landscape. However, there's one more flight of steps up. Wow! Top of the rock. Oh, this is the kind of view you get when you climb a hill. Normally at this point, I would be producing an apple and a piece of cheese from my rucksack. A wedge-shaped piece of cheese, of course.
I could wax lyrical about this place all day, and so, I'm sure, could the panel of judges, which included architect Jonathan Manser.
What was it that led you to vote for this as the winner?
It's just got a confidence and certainty about it, and about how it's been put together. It starts with the client wanting a modern house built. Actually, what's going on here is a step beyond that. The client said, not only do I want a modern house, I want it to be a statement of architecture. And it's not like a house. You go inside and it's a fantastically well thought out, detailed house inside. But it's saying something new about what a house can be.
What can we learn from something like this?
People will be looking at this and saying, actually, if we looked at our site and used the same thought process, It's not the same ideas. It's the thought process that goes into architecture that people tend to miss. And that's what the award is for.
Yeah. Thank you, John.
Not at all. I'm angling for an invitation to stay.
Perhaps that's your ultimate criterion.
Great buildings respond to people and to place. What I love about this house is that it does both of those so eloquently. You know, there's this hard carapace, this great black crust of an exterior, which is bold and it is geological. And then there's this beautiful, soft, domestic and embracing interior, which seems highly flexible and pliant. It's the relationship between the two, though, which is so elegantly done here. It's the consistency of the story of the building inside and out, which is poetic, it's lyrical. You know, so often when we talk about context and buildings responding to their context, what we really mean is this art of telling stories, the great narrative potential of architecture to make sense of the planet and to make sense of our lives. I challenge anybody to come here and not be captivated by the story that this building tells.